Good afternoon, and welcome to Stanford's Mental Health and Wellness Virtual Summit. I'm Joe O'Callahan, the Department Head for Social Work for the Stanford Public Schools, and along with Kevin Fleischer, a junior at AITE and an executive board member of the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council, we want to welcome you here to this event. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his involvement with the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council and why mental health matters so much to our students. Kevin?
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Kevin Fleischer, and I am a junior at AITE. As Mr. O'Callahan mentioned, I am also an executive member of the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council at AITE, which is a student activism club stretched across many high schools in our area. At AITE, we focus on the topics of sexual harassment awareness, suicide prevention, and of course, mental health. Our club places a large emphasis on mental health because it is a topic that is often overlooked, even though it affects countless people around me and students across the district. People tend to shy away from the topic because of the stigma surrounding it. But with Milk and this great event, we aim to break that stigma and start a discussion about a pervasive issue in our schools. Especially during this difficult year, students, including myself, have felt an enormous amount of stress that has taken a toll on our mental livelihoods. I think it's important that this mental toil and mental health as a whole is addressed. And that's why I'm so glad to be a part of this amazing event where I hope you learn a thing or two about mental health.
Thank you, Kevin. So just a couple of logistical things before we get started. First, at 4 o'clock, there's going to be a live panel discussion where we've asked several members of our community from different areas, wellness, mental health, the faith community connecting people, to really get together to talk about the importance of a holistic approach to mental health. And that'll be at 4, and you can tune into that and ask questions as well. And secondly, all of the presentations that are here are available to watch consecutively, or you can pick ones you want to watch at different times. They will also be available later. So if you can't watch them all today and you want to watch something later in the week or something, you'll be able to do that. There's also a community resource page. So if you or your family's having a difficult situation and are looking for some support, there are lots of resources on that page with links to those agencies in the community that can be helpful to you. Finally, many of the presentations are in Spanish, and you will see when you go to the page whether or not that's available in Spanish for you. So we're really thrilled you're here, and I'm going to turn it back to Kevin, and then we'll get started.
Thank you all for coming, and we hope you enjoy this amazing event.
Hello, my name is Kimberly Wolfson-Lissack, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker here in Stanford and also the clinical director for Safe Haven, a shelter and short-term respite program as part of Kids in Crisis in Greenwich, Connecticut. We've missed you. We've missed a lot over this last year. One of the hardest parts of living through the pandemic of COVID-19 is missing out on special times with our family, our friends, our religious organizations, and our school communities. We've missed important events and moments that we won't be able to get back. With the vaccine becoming more readily available for people who want it, and with restrictions being lifted, I think it's surprising for some people to still have conflicting feelings about reconnecting with one another. Fear, anxiety, or hesitation are all normal feelings to have as we change and transition through another time. Spring and summer is a great time to start seeing each other in safe places. So I have a few suggestions on how to reduce that anxiety and fear related to reconnecting with one another. First of all, start small. If big crowds make you nervous, stick to small gatherings and stay outside if that makes you feel better. The parks, the beaches, patios, backyards are perfect ways to start reconnecting with one another. 2, be patient and kind with yourself and with your loved ones. Routines that we establish during quarantine are hard to break. Give yourself the time that's necessary and go slow. 3rd, talk to your family and your friends about your feelings. It might surprise you and bring you some comfort to know that others are feeling the same hesitation that you're feeling. And lastly, if you need to talk to a professional, I'd like to encourage you to call the Kids in Crisis hotline. We are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Trained and professional counselors will answer your call and offer support and help and problem solving to you, your family, your neighbors, and your community. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 203-622-6556. Let's be here for each other because we've missed it. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Emily Siegel. Today I'm going to be talking about the importance of routines and schedules. But first I'll tell you about myself. I'm a clinical social worker at the Family Centered School-Based Health Center. I earned my master's in social work at Hunter College and have been working at Stanford High School for 20 years since then. I can honestly say that this past year has been unlike any before it. Family Centers has many programs for families and individuals, from counseling programs to groups for grieving children, literacy volunteer services to support for people living with HIV. The school-based health centers are located within several public schools in Stanford, offering a variety of services by licensed nurse practitioners, social workers, dental professionals, nutritionists, and a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Here's a list of our locations. Any student in these Stanford public schools can be enrolled at the health center, where our services are at no cost to you. I'm thankful for the opportunity today to discuss the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the students in our schools, and specifically how this year of remote and hybrid learning has affected the mental and physical health of our children and teens. My specific focus will be on the roles of routines and schedules in our lives, how they've been disrupted, and how we can work to reinstate them back into our lives. In retrospect, it didn't take long to feel the effects of the pandemic on our schools and our daily lives. As a clinician in the high school, I was lucky enough to keep talking to students from home, even after the schools went to remote learning. I found that students seemed to need to talk more than ever, and what they spoke about foreshadowed many of the challenges that students continue to face to this day as the pandemic drags on. I've lost all my motivation to go to class or do my homework. I'm up all night and I sleep all day. I feel so cut off from my friends. Are they still my friends? I'm getting used to being home. What will happen when we have to go back to school full time? I have no energy, no interest in doing anything. Undoubtedly, the students listening to this can think of other worries they've had as well. It's been a very tough year. It's so important to help our kids get through this stressful time. Students, you are truly living through an unprecedented school year. We want to do whatever is necessary to make sure that you come through this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic strong, resilient, and healthy. With that goal in mind, one of the most important things parents and children can do together is to develop and stick to a routine. Just as important is to create a schedule that works for everyone in the family. When everything around us is unpredictable and uncertain, routines and schedules offer us control and stability. They make us feel like we can manage the challenges we are facing We have concrete steps to take. We got this. What's the difference between a routine and a schedule? A routine is something you regularly do, something that's habitual and unvarying. A schedule is a plan for things that need to be done with a time to do them. Here are some examples of routines your family might follow. Sports or piano lessons every Monday, regular visits with family, always having pancakes or scrambled eggs for breakfast before school, winding down at night with a shower and time to read a book or sing lullabies before sleep. If you know that you have these things to look forward to during the week, it can actually ease your worries and calm your mind. You know what to expect. You know how to do this. There's nothing uncertain or scary about it. A schedule can be predictable, just like a routine, but it's more like a calendar of events for the day or the week. For instance, no matter whether it's a remote or an in-person day at school, we wake up at the same time. We have lunch at the same time, too. We set aside time to relax and time for homework. Maybe we walk the dog at 4 o'clock every afternoon. That's a schedule. And if we make a schedule that balances responsibilities with fun time, we can feel like we've got things under control, and this can help us to stop worrying. It might seem surprising that such simple concepts as schedules and routines could have such a serious impact on our well-being, but that's exactly what we've seen this past year. Maybe you parents and students have seen it as well. Students who seem more worried than usual, overwhelmed, or uncertain about what to expect from each day. Maybe you've noticed that grades have been slipping. Students may seem isolated, spending more time on their computers or cell phones than they do with family or with friends. They might seem irritable or angry, or maybe they've become more clingy and afraid to leave mom or dad's side or go out of the house. Certainly, we've seen struggles with engaging in school and staying motivated to turn in homework or participate in Google Classroom. For students who already have plenty of pressures on them, schoolwork, managing social lives, self-esteem, growing up, the added stress of this uncertain and at times scary year has made life even harder for a lot of us. At times, it's felt like gravity simply stopped working. We've been floating off in all directions into unfamiliar territory, no longer surrounded by people and places we've grown accustomed to. We need something to bring us back down to earth. And that's where routines and schedules come in. Routines can give us a sense of security and predictability. No matter how many other things change, I know I can count on always shooting hoops with my dad when he gets home from work. My aunt bringing over mac and cheese for dinner once a week. A schedule helps establish a feeling of control. I know I won't forget to do my homework because my mom makes sure I'm in the living room doing my work from 3 to 5 every afternoon. I'll always have clean clothes for school tomorrow because I do my laundry on Saturday mornings. There are real benefits for parents too. Routines can help you get organized and get things done without all the stress. Schedules keep family members focused on what they need to do, whether it's paying bills, finishing a project for social studies, or taking out the garbage. So how do we go about establishing routines and schedules? Parents, you know that the best way to guarantee buy-in from kids is to involve them in the decision-making. Take out a legal pad and sit down with your child to brainstorm. Students, this is a good opportunity to voice what's important to you and what might make life seem less chaotic. No one knows your responsibilities as well as you do, so be sure to speak up. As you make your schedule, start with a list of essential things first, like homework, chores, getting exercise, a good bedtime. And when thinking about routines, keep in mind that this is a chance to add enjoyable and even memorable activities to your day. One way to think of routines is that routines create memories that your family will keep for years. Turn the ordinary into something special. This will also give order to your lives, a wonderful sense of predictability. In other words, a routine. Turn chores into something fun. My brother used to play his guitar to entertain me and my little sister as we washed the dishes. Find a book to share and take turns reading chapters out loud. Make checking in with each family member at least once a day part of your routine. It's a great way to stay connected and really know how each other is doing. That's more important than ever during this strange pandemic year when so many of us feel anxious or sad. There are lots of helpful websites to give you ideas for setting schedules. Some great ideas are to keep a calendar or dry erase board on your fridge to keep schedules in plain sight of the whole family. My family used to have rotating chores on a list taped to the kitchen cabinet when I was growing up. Who set the table, who cleared it, and who did the dishes. Remember that keeping to a sleep schedule is good for your mind and body. We're all more resilient and energized when we've had a good night's sleep. And speaking of sleep, make it a part of your daily schedule to turn off your electronics. It will help you sleep better and give you a chance to feel free from nonstop texts, emails, and notifications. This lets our brains get some rest too, along with the rest of our bodies. I hope I've been able to emphasize how important it is to our mental health to have routines and schedules. Sometimes the simplest ideas can make the biggest difference, but I know that there are concerns that can't always be addressed by simple ideas, and I want to encourage any of you who needs help or knows someone who does to reach out for support. It's easy to feel alone trying to cope with the impact of the pandemic, but you're not, I promise. And family centers and the school-based health centers are here to help, as are so many wonderful organizations in our area. Please feel free to contact me at esiegel@familycenters.org or visit the Family Center's website. Thanks for listening and stay healthy and safe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Seymour, and I'm going to be doing the presentation today on family communication. So welcome. I am Robin Seymour, and I am the Director of Outpatient Services at the Child Guidance Center of Southern Connecticut. We refer to it as CGC. I am a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years experience working with children, adolescents, and families. CGC has been working in the community for about 75 years, and last year we became affiliated with the Community Health Center. We are currently open, seeing clients through telehealth, and we are planning on opening up in-person services very soon. So if your child is in any need of services, we are here to help. 203-324-6127, and I will go over that with you again at the end. So how to get your kids to talk, building positive family communication and improving your relationships. So why is family communication so important? Well, positive communication builds healthy attachment and a secure base for kids, healthy self-esteem and self-worth, and connection, and as well as positive relationships. When you have poor communication within the family, that can lead to attachment ruptures, which in the end will be barriers to your child communicating with you. I'm going to move myself up a little bit here. Barrier to communication and their secure base is somewhat taken away. It can lead to the self-esteem, low self-esteem, feelings of isolation, which then can lead to feelings of anxiety and depression in children. So that is why communication is important. Positive family communication equals positive relationships. There's four focus areas that we want to focus on today to build the communication, and that is learning to accept and acknowledge your child's feelings, encourage cooperation and verbal expression of feelings and thoughts, not punishing your child for their lack of understanding or having coping skills on their own communication skills, encouraging autonomy, problem solving, and self-confidence, and practicing and role modeling self-care. So emotional coaching is really the key to communicate with kids. The basic ideas are: 1, be aware of your child's emotions. Help your child verbally label emotions. Recognize emotions as an opportunity for intimacy, connection, and a teaching moment for you. Listen empathetically and validate your child's feelings. Be curious and ask questions. And begin problem solving only after your child feels understood. So, being aware of emotions. Do you know when your child is sad, angry, confused? What are the signs that they show you this? Do you know the difference between your child's defensive emotion and their primary emotion? For instance, when your child feels hurt, did they express it as anger, irritability? Are they hoping to just bring you closer, or are they trying to get some space from you? What are these emotions? Well, there's 8 basic emotions, believe it or not. And they are anger, fear, pain, joy, passion, love, shame, and guilt. And everything else, frustration, is part of anger. So it's good to think of these in the 8 basic ways. So help your child verbally label their emotions. In communication, you want to help your child find the words for what they are feeling and give examples. You're frustrated, upset, sad. Let your child know it's okay to feel 2 different feelings at the same time. You can be happy and also feel a little disappointed. Let them know there are no good or bad feelings, and most feelings will pass with some time. And again, the 8 basic emotions, you have the same ones, so as your child. So work on being a good role model in your own emotional awareness and expression. You'd be surprised how many adults, when I ask them to check in how they're feeling, they'll tell me they're tired. That's not an actual emotion, that's a physical feeling. So be aware of what you're actually feeling. Why are recognizing emotions so important? Well, it's an opportunity for building connection and teaching. Children need you the most when they're sad, angry, and afraid. Your ability to soothe your upset, your upset child is when you feel most like a parent. It feels good to help them. Parents can soothe children with their words, as well as using physical forms of communication to soothe them. Hugs, holding hands. Acknowledging emotions helps children to learn the skills they need to soothe themselves. They learn that they're not feeling happy. What can they do about it? You're showing them. Addressing less intense feelings and topics gives you a chance to practice listening and problem solving for when the stakes are a lot higher, when it's high emotion. There are no real teachable moments when children or parents are upset. So wait, take a breath, and talk later. It's important. Nobody hears when they're upset. So true communication skills for parents. Some skills: active listening and validating these feelings we're talking about. Pay attention to your child's body language, facial expressions, and gestures. Sit at your child's level, take a deep breath, relax, and focus on them. Paying attention and actively listening lets children know that you are taking your time to take their concerns seriously, and that you're willing to spend this time with them. As children reveal their feelings, reflect back of what you're hearing. Just reflect it back. Check in with your child. Is this what I'm hearing? I understand you feel sad. Is that true? Listen to your children tell their side of what they're trying to explain, and try to see the situations and emotions through their eyes. That's basically being empathetic. Show understanding. Share examples from your own life when you felt similarly. And after your child does tell you their story, then you can start to ask questions to find out the full story. Empathetic listening and validation. Here are the don'ts. Parents should stay away from the why questions. which more often puts a child on the defense. Instead of stick to what and how questions and show curiosity. Don't ask, why are you so mad? Instead, how did that affect you? Tell me what it's like for you. What is it that made you so mad? How did that make you feel? Avoid questions you know the answer to, and don't try to catch your child in a lie. Don't ask, did you skip class today? Instead, say, the school called and told me you skipped class today and I'm disappointed. Avoid asking rhetorical questions. These are just statements and you're trying to, towards your point of view. It's not looking to get any information from them. So your child may in the end feel interrogated or manipulated, and then they're gonna stop coming to you to talk. So, validating your child's feelings does not mean that you agree with your child or give them permission to do a certain behavior or activity, or that you even feel that you feel the same in their situation. Nor does it mean that you approve of your child's behavior and that you think there should be no consequences. Validating just means you heard your child and understand what they're saying. I think a lot of times parents think validation means they just accept it. And you do, but it doesn't mean that you agree with it. Don't discount feelings. Don't tell people, your child, how they feel. Don't use logic or try to fix the problem in the moment. Those are the don'ts. Instead, be curious, ask questions. Can you tell me more? What was or is this like for you? What did that make you think? How does this affect you? What does this mean to you? Again, how did it make you feel? Curious stance is more important than teaching at that moment. You will get the kids to talk. Begin problem solving only after your child feels understood. Many times as parents, we want to fix the problem for our kids, but that's not always the best way to build the communication and get them to learn for themselves. So making children learn to express their emotions first and then think of the problem solving is protective, and it builds connection and healthy attachment with the parent, which means being secure. Listening and validating is often all your child wants. They may often come up with their own solutions, especially older children. So give them that space to do that. Once children understand what is bothering them and how they feel, they often come up with their own solutions, or they'll at least be more prepared to work with you to come up with solutions. When children are less preoccupied with defending themselves or rejecting their parents' advice, we can more easily challenge them to turn inward, be reflective, and think about what they want and need. As we give children more responsibility to participate in the problem solving, they will more likely turn to their parents for help and advice. So that's the whole point, creating that communication and making sure your kids come to you when they need you. So what are problem solving skills? Just to review here, we want to identify the goals. What's the problem we're trying to fix? Brainstorm. No idea is too stupid or too silly. Write down all your ideas about how to fix the problem. Remind your children or your child, of their past successes and how they've handled them. And then you want to evaluate all these proposed solutions based on your own family values. Is this solution fair? Will it work? Is it safe? How am I likely to feel? How will other people feel? And help your child make that decision. So breaking it down into age groups, how to get your child to talk to you. So generally preschoolers, babies up until the age of 6, here's some things you want to keep in mind. Use nurturing language to develop positive feelings of self and others about the world. Reinforce the range of emotions and fears that they have. Reinforce that they're normal, all these fears. They're new to the kids, they're not sure. Preschoolers, well, they understand a lot, but they're still developing their language skills in order to express themselves. So remember, keep that in mind. Encourage inquiry and curiosity, facilitate learning through play, use everyday experiences to explain concepts, be open to playing pretend with them, Ask specific questions that zero in on a detail. Instead of how was your day, what did you like better today, snack time or circle time? Observe behavior and then ask, when I picked you up, you had a bit of a funny face. Did something happen? So you want to observe and then ask, and allow them to make some simple decisions and sharing of their opinions. As kids get older, how to encourage them to talk to you. We are going to demonstrate understanding and respect of their feelings, which we've talked about. I'm going to move myself up here again. Here's our little very busy mom. We're going to facilitate interactive problem solving, critical thinking, modeling the pro-social actions, kindness, conflict resolution, empathy. Don't bombard your children with questions as soon as you see them. I know we all have been guilty of that when they jump in the car after school. But remember, your child has been on all day at school. If something's wrong or has happened, understand they might not be ready to talk to you about it. So let them know that when they are, you will be there and you will listen. Stay neutral when they do share something. Reconnect by just being present. Hey, bud, I missed you. Let me take your backpack. Again, don't bombard. If you and your child are too busy during the day to talk or to communicate with each other about something, set aside 10 minutes after dinner with your child for a very focused activity to do together, such as a quiet coloring or a puzzle, and that should set the stage, hopefully, for talking. Okay, and now we're going into those tweens and teens. So, guide them into adult life by opening up to discuss behaviors that may put them at risk. You're probably one of the best resources for them on this. Recognize and respect their ideas and opinions. Allow them to learn from their own mistakes. Big one. Present divergent points of view, opinions, and perspectives for them. Create opportunities to discuss and learn about role models with whom they can identify. And talk about the issues of concern that are of concern to them. Substance use, relationships, bullying, sex, friendships, all these areas are, of their concern, and they hopefully will open up with that neutral stance you're taking. When is emotional coaching or communication not appropriate? Okay, when a parent is pressed for time, when you have an audience, let's say extended family are around, that's not the time to discuss how they're feeling. When a parent is too upset or tired for coaching or communication to be productive. When a parent needs to address some kind of serious misbehavior or safety issues. And when your child, or teen really, is faking an emotion to manipulate you, and most likely you know when those times are. So, what are the common pitfalls? Here's mom and son fighting. I think some of us might relate to that. Do not discount your child's feelings or thoughts. Do not invalidate. Do not interrupt. Do not give evidence, logic, or argue facts. And do not lecture or nag. Children aren't listening when you lecture and nag, trust me. When a parent uses nonverbal communication as another pitfall, they can end up sending mixed messages. For example, they might be talking about how proud they are of their child, but they're shaking their head no, because they're not actually, and it's not authentic. Or this, the old pointing of the finger, or I will count how many times. And that's all in their face, and that's really not going to help a child. And as you can see in our little picture, guess who's learning the same type of behavior? The other pitfall is trying to fix the problem very quickly for our kids. We're protective. That's part of that attachment piece. Parents want to protect and love, but sometimes we want to fix. And we want to just sometimes listen and be empathetic is all the child really needs to handle their own problems and feelings. So we want to encourage that. It's autonomy that we talked about earlier. And that's a good thing. So remember, it can be easy to misunderstand someone even when we're trying our best. So please be patient with yourself and your child, and don't forget to breathe. So what else can you do to improve family communication? You're being empathetic, you're being age appropriate, you're validating. All these things are going to truly get your kids to speak to you. You're not judging them. You're not alarmed when they tell you something. So what else can we do? We can make sure to schedule family time. Establish some family routines. Here our mom is cooking with the kids. What a great way to teach them skills and have fun together. Eat your meals together. Allow for one-on-one time with each child. So important. Remember to be an active listener. Attack the problem, not each other. And work on showing kindness, appreciation, and gratitude. Remember, you're the role model. So in that vein, self-care. One thing parents really need to do to build their communication in their family is to take care of themselves. Self-care does not mean you're being selfish. It's really looking at what brings you joy and gives you a sense of authenticity, meaning unique to you. Find out what's right for you. Many times as we parent and we go through work and we're so busy, we forget the things that really brought us joy. For example, music, listening to music. So there's kind of 4 areas of self-care. There's the emotional. Do you like journaling, reading, going to therapy, taking care of yourself? Music, animals. The physical, exercising, going to the doctor, the dentist. Spiritual, religion, church, synagogue, mosque, meditation, yoga, getting in touch with nature. These are all spiritual ways to take care of yourself. And again, social being really important, especially in light of this year, how all of the self-care has been so important with the pandemic, is scheduling time to be with friends, maybe a date night with your spouse. So please take care of yourself because you are important. So again, just to review, positive family communication really equals positive relationships. Let's review these areas that I talked about. Accept and acknowledge your child's feelings. Use the emotional coaching we talked about as your base. Encourage cooperation and verbal expression of the feelings and thoughts, and never punish them for not having their skills, like I said. Encourage autonomy, self-confidence, and problem solving, and then practice and role model your own self-care. So that's it. And I wanted to thank you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and learned something you can take away today with you that will improve your communication with your children and build those relationships. Just so you know, again, Child Guidance Center is here for you. Our number is 203-324-6127. And you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our website is childguidancect.org. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.
Hi, this is John Hamilton, CEO of Liberation Programs, and today I'm going to talk to you about creating and maintaining healthy relationships. So to create and maintain a healthy relationship, it has to start with you. You have to create a healthy relationship with yourself first, which is about self-care, taking care of yourself, being forgiving of yourself, being accepting of yourself, being comfortable in your own skin. In fact, the best definition I ever heard of mental health is to feel lovable, capable, and connected. And obviously it starts with your own ability to give and receive love, to feel capable in your life of being able to have some confidence, and also, most importantly, to be connected. Connected to others, connected to something greater than yourself. This is what gives life purpose and gives life meaning. We talk about in addiction treatment and recovery that we always quote Johann Hari, who wrote a book called Chasing the Scream. He was a British journalist that focused on what the key components of addiction and treatment and recovery are all about. And at the end of the day, he said the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. So it's about how to be connected to others. Being connected to others means, as I say, you need to be connected with yourself first. And to be connected means being able to have a lens of not knowing that other person you're trying to connect to without any sense of judgment. We talk about meeting people where they're at. If you meet people where they are, you'll always walk away with new understanding. You'll always walk away with empathy, and sometimes you'll even walk away with compassion and love. If you walk away with judgment, haven't really met that person where they're at yet. And that usually means you have an expectation of where that person should be versus where they are. Another important component is we always talk about how here at Liberation, you have to show people how much you care before you show them how much you know. Otherwise, they don't care how much you know. And it's about being able to see your genuineness and your interest in them. And with interest means reflective listening. If you're really not sure what somebody's saying to you, being able to be a good listener means being able to reflect it back like a mirror to just check in to see if you're on track with that person. It's about being nice and forgiving. It's about showing your humanness. One of the most important ways of being able to put yourself out there is in being authentic, is being able to see that showing your humanness makes you more lovable. Talk about like your most embarrassing moment. I use the example of like in families, parents oftentimes in the family dinner, they'll ask their kid, "Hey, Brad, how'd you do in math today?" "Oh, fine, Dad." Katie, how did you do in your lacrosse practice?" Oh, it was fine. My encouragement for parents to be authentic and real and share their own humanness is to say, "Hey, let me tell you what an ass I made of myself at work today. I was in this meeting, I fell backwards, fell on my back, everybody laughed, it was embarrassing." Now you have Brad and Katie at the table more likely to say, "You think that was embarrassing, Dad? You should have seen what happened to me in the Zoom meeting this week or in the classroom," or whatever their situation is. They're going to be more willing to share their humanness if you lead by example. Let's dig a little deeper now and talk about intimacy, relationships that are even closer. Intimacy is about sharing experiences. Intimacy is who you share your secrets with. It's sharing with partners and peers. And there's really kind of like a cookbook of 7 different types of intimacy that you can work on, even with friendships, and then sometimes even building romantic relationships. The first intimacy would be recreational intimacy. If you really want to get to know somebody, go for a hike with them. Play tennis with them. Find an activity that you have in common and share that experience. The worst thing that's going to happen is you'll have a good workout and you'll share that experience. Then there's social intimacy. You have certain friends, they have certain friends. Share your friends groups and have them kind of connect each other. Sometimes this is a little harder because maybe your friends knew you at a different time and they haven't evolved, but maybe you've evolved. I think in your world, it's important to have friends who share a history together, friends who share who you are today, and friends who share who you want to be tomorrow. Then there's aesthetic intimacy, which is sharing your favorite Netflix series, sharing your favorite music, sharing your favorite art. It's the appreciation of beauty together, sharing that experience with someone. Then there's intellectual intimacy. Intellectual intimacy is being able to share thoughts and ideas, and it doesn't mean getting along and always agreeing with the person, but it means having a mutual respect for each other's ideas. Now it gets a little bit more intimate. Emotional intimacy. Think in your life. Who are you vulnerable enough to put your guard down and cry in front of and share sadness, share anger, share joy? And they may be different people in your life today. If you had circles that you drew, who you could actually share those feelings with would be a nice exercise to see where are you at with being able to share your emotional intimacy. Spiritual intimacy. For some people, the idea of a higher power or a faith community is something very important to who they are, and having that shared experience with somebody may be a very important consideration. And last but not least, physical intimacy. Physical intimacy is two different types: affection and sexual intimacy. The affection sometimes is even more vulnerable for some people to be able to just be held. And again, a silly kind of way, or one way to look at how you want to develop a sense of intimacy, is that you really want to get the first 6 down right before you even enter into the 7th, to really not have any risk of feeling taken advantage of or taken for granted. So I always say, when I do work with couples, that the intimacy outside the bedroom is usually directed to the intimacy inside the bedroom and vice versa. So that ability to share of yourself, start small and take positive risks. So again, just to recap, creating a healthy relationship with somebody else starts with taking responsibility for a healthy relationship with yourself. Hope some of this information was helpful today. Have a great day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Ringelheim. I'm a psychologist and the director of psychology training at the Child Guidance Center of Southern Connecticut. I'm here to talk to you today about school avoidance, when going to school doesn't feel like an option. So what is school avoidance? School avoidance can be described in many different ways, and it can present in many different ways, but generally speaking, it's children who avoid attending school with varying degrees of severity. At the most severe, it's usually around 5%, and that looks like school refusal altogether, not going to school, not willing to attend, participate, really anything. And it can be as high as 28% of children, and that can look like avoidance of particular classes, test material, missing a day of school each week on a fairly continuous basis. So school refusal and school avoidance can look like many different things, and it affects a very large swath of population. You can see the ranges between 5 and 28% is a fairly large variety. School refusal can start at any point in time, but usually during times of transition. So we think about things that are happening at home, like divorce, or even transitioning between parents if there is a divorce situation or shared custody. Also with transitions between schools, like the beginning of middle school or high school, and of course, COVID-19. One thing that's important to remember about school refusal is that it's really, really activating for parents, for school personnel, and for therapists, as well as for the student. I always say, if you really want to get adults riled up, refuse to go to school. And you'll see that this is something that really breaks a lot of our social norms, that children should go to school. They should be able to do this learning. And it's really important to remember that school refusal or school avoidance is not laziness. It's really a form of communication that something is not working within the school system. So a child is telling you, by refusing school or by avoiding particular elements of school, they're telling you in no uncertain terms that society's idea of education is not working for them. So what causes school avoidance? There are lots of contributing factors. One is avoiding things and situations that cause difficult feelings. So that's anxiety or physical symptoms experienced while at school. You may see a student going to the nurse on a more frequent basis. Avoiding social or evaluative situations. So that could be difficulties with peers, bullying, fears of tests. And these students are more likely to have social anxiety, depression, or learning difficulties. Sometimes children don't want to go to school because they're seeking connection. They actually want more time with their caregivers. And other times it's preferred activities at home. So they'd rather be at home watching TV in a safe place because there is something threatening about school. So staying at home is the preferred option. It's important to note too that sometimes staying at home is also to monitor what's happening at home. If a child knows that there's a younger sibling and maybe that sibling isn't so safe, or they fear that that sibling isn't safe, they may want to miss school or refuse to go to school in order to stay home and protect that sibling. That's one example, but there are many examples where children may want to stay at home to play that role either of supervisor or of protector. When you assess for school avoidance or school refusal, it's really important to make sure what I always call barking up the right tree. Because there are so many reasons that kids might refuse school or be avoiding elements of school, making sure you really understand what is at the root of their behavior. So the way that I do this is ask a lot of imaginal questions to assess. So for example, imagine that you could create your own school. And let's say this school, it's just you and one teacher, and that's it. There's no other students. How would that feel? And their answer can really give you an insight into how they're experiencing social anxiety. Because if social anxiety isn't the crux of it, then this question isn't really going to be meaningful for them. On the other hand, imagine you could go to school, but there's no homework, no tests, no grades. What would that be like? Then we're touching upon academic concerns. And you can start to create questions and start to assess really what is happening by using these imaginal questions. And that may be one way to better understand what's happening with a student. So of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch upon school avoidance or refusal in the pandemic. Of course, we've never seen anything like this. School has always been a constant for most students. And of course, in the past year, we've seen it change forms over and over again. And we've seen an increase in school avoidance and school refusal since the beginning of the pandemic. Part of this is because routines have been disrupted and students have less oversight. Their environments are very heterogeneous. So one student might be in a secure, like private room where they have their computer. Other students might be learning at home with, many siblings in a multi-generational household. So the environment can look really, really different for each individual. So what this means is there's a little bit less oversight and students have a little bit more autonomy. Now, what we know about school refusal is that the more that somebody avoids, the more that somebody stays away from the anxiety or their fear, the worse it becomes. Conversely, exposure, the more that we go in and do something, the less that fear becomes. So in this case, with COVID-19 in particular, children who already had a underlying concern or fear about going to school, this may have been really exacerbated. And it may be harder to go back to school at this point. I think many people are feeling this element of avoidance that we've all been experiencing because we haven't been out in the world. We haven't been in social situations. And so even for people who are extraordinarily resilient, the idea of going to a large party may still cause at least pause, if not some anxiety. So understanding that for kids, reintegrating into what was considered normal may be more of a struggle than it had been previously. So some signs to look for in children, being aware of what's happening in their internal worlds. So depression or anxiety, this can look like many different things. For depression, potentially withdrawal, being sad, crying episodes. I'm also going to add anger, especially in young males, changes in appetite, sleep, risk-taking behaviors, and decrease in concentration and motivation. For anxiety, there's a lot of overlap. So difficulty staying present and focused in the moment, physical ailments, changes in appetite and sleep, persistent thoughts that are difficult to escape. So rumination, just those thoughts that keep coming over and over again. fears that maybe are excessive to the level of threat that exists, excessive worries, and for younger children, difficulty separating from caregivers and loss of milestones that had been met. So a developmental regression, for example, a child that had been using the toilet independently may have some accidents. And that can be a sign of anxiety in the younger children. So how can parents help? Find members of the child's team. I think in parents with children who are school avoidant or school refusing, it can be extraordinarily stressful, and it can feel like there's a lot of pressure on the outside to get your child to do certain things that they are clearly not wanting to do. And oftentimes there's a sense of being torn between rigidity of like, yes, you're going to go, this is happening, or permissiveness, saying, okay, I get it, you can't go today. And it requires a lot of support for parents to help to find that balance so that the child feels both supported as well as nurtured as they are facing their fears. So I can't really stress that enough, that parent support is going to be really, really key. It can look like members of the child's team. So go to the school, get support from school personnel, get support from potentially your own therapist, potentially bringing the child to therapist and utilizing that person as a support. Recognizing truly that school avoidance and refusal, it is a symptom, it is not the problem. And so again, getting to the root and barking up that right tree of like, why is this happening is really important. So identifying what's causing the symptom is really, really key in being able to make changes. Acknowledging that small steps are big successes. Don't expect the world overnight. Things aren't going to return like going to school 100% all at once, and really celebrate those smaller successes. There are supports in terms of assessment. So the school refusal assessment scale can be a really great tool. You can find it online. It's a quick Google search. And again, don't let this go treated or untreated for too long, and get help, because we know the longer it goes untreated, the more anxiety that can build because of that avoidance pattern. And so when to seek outside help. If you feel overwhelmed or don't know what to say or do, if you're noticing that your child is having thoughts of harm to self or others, any discussion of death, or if they're willing and they're asking to go to therapy, or you say, do you want therapy? And they say yes, that is an invitation and a call for help. So we really do recommend that you seek services at that point. And this can be really helpful. A therapist is an outside person who can give a bit of different perspective. It's an extra set of eyes and ears on the child so that parents and school personnel are not managing these situations alone. And children often don't want to burden their parents or people who they are really connected to in school. So oftentimes they'll keep a lot on the inside. So Child Guidance Center is a resource for you. We do provide individual, family, group counseling, as well as mobile crisis services, wraparound services, case management. So we really are there to help if you have any concerns or if anything is going on around school refusal or school avoidance. All of our information is included here for social media. And I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today.
Hello, my name is Danielle Walker,
And I'm Maylin Martinez.
and we are community educators for the Roan Center. The Rowan Center is a sexual assault resource agency that is based in Stamford, Connecticut, and we serve the 8 towns of Lower Fairfield County. So that includes Wilton, Westport, Weston, all the way down through Greenwich. We provide programs and services that are free and confidential for primary and secondary victims. So a primary victim is someone who was directly affected, meaning that the assault happened to them. A secondary victim is someone that was indirectly affected. So that includes parents, siblings, a significant other, a friend, or even a witness to the event. Some of the programs and services that we have is that we have a 24-hour crisis hotline that you could call any time of the day, night, holiday, it doesn't matter. There's always a trauma-informed advocate on that other end that is willing to speak with you in both English and in Spanish. If you have a question, you want more information about something, or if you were triggered by something that you are currently going through or a long time ago, there's someone there that is willing to listen to you. We also have counseling, which is free up to 12 sessions. And it's a one-on-one session with the counselors that we have at our organization. We also do support groups, which is kind of like counseling, but more in a group-based setting with activities centered around it. For example, we have a self-care through art group and a trauma-informed yoga group, just to name a few. We also do advocacy, which means that we accompany victims to the hospital, the police department, and the courts as a form of emotional support. We also do prevention education, which is basically where we go to almost every elementary, middle school, and high school in the 8 towns that we serve to talk about how we can prevent sexual violence in our communities.
Nosotras somos educadoras comunitarias del Centro Rowan. El Centro Rowan es una agencia de recursos para víctimas de violencia sexual. Nosotros servimos a todo lo que es el condado bajo de Fairfield, desde Weston, Westport, Wilton hasta Greenwich. Estamos ubicados en Stamford, Connecticut, y tenemos una línea de 24 horas en inglés y en español para asistir a las víctimas, personas que tengan alguna pregunta o estén pasando por un momento de trauma debido a la situación por la que pasaron de violencia sexual. Pueden llamarnos a cualquier hora y cualquier día. Nosotros también, entre los programas y servicios que tenemos, es el de consejería. Nosotros ofrecemos consejería para las víctimas primarias y las secundarias. Una víctima primaria es aquella que recibió fue afectada directamente por un acto de violencia sexual. Y una víctima secundaria es toda aquella indirectamente afectada, por ejemplo, los padres, los amigos o la pareja de la víctima primaria. Nosotros también hacemos acompañamientos al hospital cuando la víctima decide ir al hospital, y también la acompañamos a la policía si necesitan llenar un reporte policial, y si el caso pasa a la corte, nosotros también los acompañamos y estamos con la víctima durante todo el proceso para ofrecer un apoyo emocional, contestar cualquier pregunta que puedan tener. Nosotros también tenemos un programa de educación preventiva donde vamos a casi todas las escuelas elementares, las intermedias, las secundarias y las 2 universidades en el área, y hablamos sobre cómo prevenir la violencia sexual. Vamos a corporaciones, vamos a grupos comunitarios y hablamos de cómo prevenir la violencia sexual.
And today we're going to be having a conversation about what consent is and where it cannot be present, and what you can do to support someone who is a victim of sexual violence.
Hoy vamos a estar hablando sobre qué es el consentimiento, cómo el consentimiento puede ser dado, cuando el consentimiento no existe, y también vamos a estar hablando de cómo tú puedes ayudar y ser un apoyo para alguien que ha sido víctima de violencia sexual.
Consent only exists when there's a clear, active yes from all individuals involved. It must be a genuine and enthusiastic yes from everyone. Consent is never implied or assumed. It can be given or taken back at any time, and no outside forces or pressures can influence someone's decision to give consent.
El consentimiento debe ser dado de manera voluntaria, y solamente sí significa sí. No puede estar sujeto a ninguna fuerza exterior, y cuando alguien está consintiendo tiene que ser de una forma auténtica y genuina.
So when we talk about how consent is not implied or assumed, that means that if someone has a close relationship with someone, whether it's a best friend they may have or even a significant other, we can't assume that we have consent just because we have a relationship with them. Even though we know that they might say yes, we always want to make sure that we're asking for consent, because only yes means yes.
Nosotros nunca debemos pretender que tenemos el consentimiento, ni debemos asumir que el consentimiento está presente porque tenemos una relación estrecha con alguien, sea de amistad o de relación sentimental. Siempre es bueno preguntar porque solamente sí significa sí.
And when we say that it could be given or taken back at any time, that means that if consent was given one day, that doesn't mean that the consent is given the next day. So we always want to make sure that it is okay with the other person and we are asking for consent.
También el consentimiento puede ser dado y retirado en cualquier momento. Es importante de que nosotros siempre se estemos preguntando y asegurarnos de que tenemos el consentimiento.
And when we say that no outside force or pressure can influence someone to give consent, that means that if there are any type of pressures or forces present, then consent is not present. Whether that's physical, through threats, blackmail, drugs or alcohol, coercion, manipulation, or peer pressure, consent is not present.
Cuando mencionamos que el consentimiento debe ser dado libremente sin ninguna fuerza exterior que esté afectando nuestra decisión de decir sí o no, nos referimos a fuerzas como por ejemplo fuerza física, manipulación, amenazas, coerción por parte de la otra persona. El consentimiento debe ser dado sin ningún tipo de presión, porque si una de estas fuerzas están presentes, entonces el consentimiento no puede estar presente.
Always remember that consent is active, based on equal power, is a choice and a process.
Y recuerda que el consentimiento está basado en igualdad de poderes, es un proceso y es una opción.
Now, what could you do if someone were to disclose to you that they were sexually assaulted?
Ahora vamos a hablar un momentito sobre qué ustedes pueden hacer si alguien le dice a ustedes, les revela que ha sido abusado sexualmente.
You do not have to be an advocate to have support for someone who has experienced any form of sexual violence. You could show your support by just listening to them, saying that you believe them, offering support and help in whatever it is that they may need, whether it's offering support to different programs and services, just being there for them, or just sitting with them as they tell you their story.
Para ser un buen aliado con alguien que ha sido víctima de violencia sexual, no necesitas tener un entrenamiento especial. Simplemente estar presente y escuchar a esa persona, porque tú quizás seas la primera persona a la que ellos le están diciendo lo que les pasó. Es importante que nos mantengamos neutrales, que no demos ningún consejo, simplemente escuchar a la persona, decirle gracias por confiar en mí, aquí estoy, dime cómo te puedo ayudar.
Oftentimes, victims of sexual assault only tell people that they feel as though they can trust. So if someone comes to you and discloses that they were sexually assaulted, it's so important to make sure that you are there as a form of support for them to see what they decide to do moving forward. What we say to them after they disclose to us is the most important.
Usualmente cuando alguien te dice que ha sido abusado sexualmente es porque esa persona confía en ti. Y dependiendo de tu reacción, eso va a determinar si esa persona va a buscar ayuda. Lo importante aquí es saber escuchar a esa persona lo que tenga que decirnos sin juzgarlos y escucharlo de una manera de que sientan que están apoyados por nosotros.
Remember, you don't have to be an advocate to show support for someone who has been sexually assaulted. You can still be a support system for them.
Y recuerda, tú no tienes que tener un entrenamiento especial para tú hablar y ofrecer tu ayuda a una persona que ha sido víctima de violencia sexual. Simplemente con ofrecerle tu apoyo, decirle, yo te creo, aquí estoy para ti, qué necesitas, en qué te puedo ayudar, es suficiente.
For more information, you could reach out to us at theromancenter.org.
Y para más información, siempre pueden contactarnos a theromancenter.org.
My name is Nakia Ellis, and I work with the Domestic Violence Crisis Center here in Stamford. And today, I would like to talk about healthy and unhealthy relationships. DVCC's mission is to help individuals on their journey to safety by offering free and confidential services for those experiencing abuse in their personal relationships. Some of our services include a 24/7 hotline that you can call or text anytime, emergency shelters for individuals and families who no longer feel safe at home, and a number of free counseling and advocacy programs, including individual and group counseling for both children and adults, legal assistance for any court-related needs, and financial advocates to help individuals and families find jobs, affordable housing, and ultimately gain financial freedom. We recognize that safer home environments lead to healthier individuals and families, which ultimately lead to a healthier community. Additionally, numerous research studies suggest a strong correlation between healthy relationships and better overall physical and mental well-being. So that is why I wanted to talk to you today about healthy and unhealthy relationships. Now, there are many components that make up a healthy relationship, and today we'll be focusing on two in particular: communications and boundaries. But don't worry if you're not currently dating or even have any interest in dating yet. These elements are not exclusive to romantic relationships. In fact, they can be applied to all the relationships in your life, including your relationship with friends and family members. Let's start off with communication. Healthy communication is essential to all the relationships in our lives because it allows us to express our wants and needs to one another. Having open and honest conversations with a friend or romantic partner is healthy because it builds trust and respect for one another. Here are some tips to help you navigate these conversations. In healthy communication, listening is just as important as speaking. However, sometimes we can fall into the trap of hearing people but not fully understanding what they're saying. That's why it's important to practice active listening. When someone is speaking, make sure you're giving them your undivided attention. An easy way to do this is by looking them in the eye and even nodding along as they speak. Additionally, you want to ask follow-up questions, and you can also repeat back what they said in order to make sure you fully understand. For example, you could say, "I heard you say you were upset that A did B. Do you mind telling me a little bit more about it?" And remember, you don't have to agree with what they're saying in order to understand them, but it is important to practice empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand another person's feelings. It's almost like taking a walk in their shoes. Some examples of what empathy looks like in a healthy relationship include being supportive, not passing judgment, and showing interest in what the other person is saying. Additionally, here are some things that you can practice saying when being empathetic. You can validate the other person's feelings. For example, you could say, "Wow, that stinks. I'm so sorry you're going through this." You can also show gratitude when they open up to you. For instance, you could say, "This must be really hard to talk about. Thank you for trusting me with this information." And most importantly, only offer advice if they ask for it. Sometimes people just want to feel heard and have their feelings validated and not necessarily receive advice. The final piece to healthy communication is healthy conflict. We are all unique individuals that have our own thoughts and opinions, so it's impossible to think that we're going to agree 100% of the time. That is why it is so important that when we do disagree with a friend or a partner, we are able to do so in a way that is still respectful. Here are some tips to keep your communication healthy during conflict. Be self-aware. Know yourself and when you need to take a break to calm down. Feeling angry is completely natural and normal. However, when we act on that anger and hurt other people, that is when it becomes unhealthy. So it's okay to tell someone during conflict that you're really upset and need to walk away and cool down for a bit before continuing the discussion. Practice using an I statement. When you are communicating what you need during a disagreement, it is important that you use an I statement which expresses how you feel in the moment without attacking the other person. So instead of saying, "You're so annoying when you're late," you can use an I statement and say, "I feel annoyed when you're late. I would like you to try and be on time in the future." And remember to state what you need from them and not what you don't need. Apologize and take responsibility. This one is big. We are human and we are bound to make mistakes. But when we do mess up, it's important to make sure we are apologizing to the other person and taking responsibility for our actions by changing our behavior. The other important element essential for a healthy relationship are boundaries. Boundaries are personal limits we set for ourselves to let other people know what we are comfortable and uncomfortable with. Everyone's boundaries are different and can change depending on the situation. That is why it is important that in healthy relationships, both people clearly communicate their boundaries and respect those boundaries once they are put in place. There are many different kinds of boundaries that we can set with people, including around our physical and personal space, our emotions, our time, our possessions, and our values. Here are some examples of how you can set a boundary in a relationship. For instance, you can say, "I'm okay with following each other on social media, but I'm not okay with sharing my password." Or, "I don't mind holding hands and hugging in public, but I feel uncomfortable kissing in front of other people. Let's save that for when it's just the two of us." Or even, "I need some quiet time for myself this evening. Let's check in with each other tomorrow." Remember, boundaries can change over time, and that's okay. All you need to do is use the healthy communication skills that we reviewed earlier to let the other person know how you're feeling now and what you need from them. Now that we discussed what healthy relationships look like, let's focus on what an unhealthy relationship might look like. Here are some examples of some red flags. Red flags are unhealthy behaviors, and they indicate that the relationship could potentially turn abusive. Red flags can be hard to notice, especially if we really like the person, or if these red flags have been normalized or romanticized by movies and TV shows. However, sometimes we will get a feeling in the pit of our stomach or hear a little voice in the back of our head. That is our body signaling to us that we are uncomfortable, and it's really important that we don't ignore it. If your friend or partner is making you uncomfortable, that is a great time to stop and have a conversation about your boundaries and let them know how you would like to be treated. 2 red flags that we'll touch on today are jealousy and controlling behaviors. Jealousy is unhealthy in a relationship because it shows a lack of trust, respecting boundaries, and healthy communication. However, I think it's important to distinguish the difference between feeling jealous and acting jealous. Feeling jealous is a natural emotion that we all experience, just like sometimes we may feel happy, sad, excited, or even angry. Feeling jealous is okay because it stays with us and we can learn to work through those emotions. But when we act on that jealousy, we tend to hurt other people. For example, if I was a child in the park and another child were to come up with a brand new toy, I might feel a little jealous because they have something that I want. However, if I were to act on that jealousy and push that child down and stole their toy, well, then I have crossed a line because my jealousy has hurt someone else. In a relationship, when someone is acting on that jealousy, it sounds like they are trying to control the other person. And in extreme cases, jealousy can even lead to violence or death. That is why it is so important to recognize jealousy for what it is and not listen to society when they tell us jealousy is a good thing because it means our partner cares for us, or jealousy is good for the relationship because it makes it more interesting or passionate. Unhealthy relationships occur when one person in that relationship has power and control over another person. And that control can be maintained in a number of different ways, including physically, verbally, emotionally, or digitally. When someone is acting controlling in a relationship, they are not respecting the other person's boundaries and independence. Some examples of controlling behaviors you might see in a relationship include not wanting a partner to hang out with certain people or limiting how much time they spend with friends and family, controlling a partner's appearance, like what outfits they can wear, always needing to know where a partner is going and whom they're going to be with, and monitoring a partner's text messages, emails, or social media posts. If you listen to all these examples, they sound a lot like what a parent might say or do when raising a child. But your partner is not your parent. They're supposed to be your equal and trust you and respect your independence and the decisions you make for your life. So if your partner ever starts to sound like a parent, as if they're above you and can control you, then that's a big red flag and it needs to be addressed right away. It is important to keep in mind that relationships fall on a spectrum from healthy to unhealthy to abusive, and abuse is not one singular incident or just happen overnight. Relationships become abusive because there's a pattern of unhealthy behaviors, those red flags that we just reviewed. Abuse can happen at a very slow pace, which may make it difficult for the victim to recognize it at the time. That is why it is so important that everyone knows about red flags, so you can point out the unhealthy behavior to a friend, even if they're unable to see it for themselves in that moment. Let's end our discussion today by seeing if you can spot the red flags in a relationship. I'm going to describe some relationship scenarios to you, and you can tell me whether you think they are healthy or unhealthy. Here's the first one. Kyle and Sam get into an argument, and Kyle gives Sam the silent treatment for 3 days. Is this healthy or unhealthy? This would be unhealthy for the relationship because it's not practicing healthy communication. While it is okay to take a break from an argument if you need to cool down or gather your thoughts, it's important that we communicate that with the other person and let them know when we're ready to talk again. By giving someone the silent treatment, we're trying to punish them or make them feel bad, which is a form of manipulation and unhealthy. Here's another one. Alex gets jealous when Jordan hangs out with other people and Alex isn't invited or around. Alex says they just want Jordan all to themselves. Would this be healthy or unhealthy? This would be unhealthy because Alex is acting jealous and not respecting Jordan's independence by allowing them to have a life outside of their relationship. And here's one last one. Darby calls Cameron a name that they don't like. Cameron tells Darby not to call them that name anymore, and Darby apologizes and doesn't do it again. Would this be healthy or unhealthy? This is healthy because not only does it show Cameron communicating what they need and setting a boundary, but it also shows that Darby apologizes for their mistake and changes their behavior by respecting the boundary now put in place. Remember, healthy relationships should make you feel safe both physically and emotionally. You should feel comfortable around that person, like you don't have to walk on eggshells around them. And the other person should bring out the best in you. And don't forget the most important element. You should have fun. And if you aren't feeling any of these things in your relationship, then DVCC is here to help.
Hi, my name is Emily Siegel, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker at the School-Based Health Center at Stanford High School. A clinical social worker is essentially a mental health counselor or therapist with master's level training in counseling for individuals, couples, and families. We also lead psychotherapy groups on lots of different topics when accessing support in a group might be helpful. If you have a child at the Stanford Public Schools, there are a lot of avenues for help if your child is exhibiting worrisome symptoms or behaviors. The public schools have excellent school social workers and psychologists who meet with students. In many of the public schools, there are school-based health centers, a program of family centers, which offer mental health counseling as well. We're open when school is in session and offer confidential services at no cost to families. Our mission is to help students who may be struggling with mood issues or friendship problems, family conflict or grief, sadness or isolation due to the pandemic, just about anything. And because we believe that healthy children make better learners, we try to get students back into the classroom as soon as possible, feeling better able to concentrate and study. Our health centers have nurse practitioners for medical needs, a nutritionist, a dental clinic located at West Hill High School, and a psychiatric nurse practitioner for students who might need medication for their mood or attention issues. If you have children at any of the following schools, all you need to do is fill out a school-based health center permission form found online on the Family Center's website or at the nurse's office, guidance offices, administration or main office in your school, or come to the health center and we'll make sure you have a copy. You only need to sign it once and it's good for as long as your children are in the public schools. We are located at Stanford High School, West Hill, AITE, Rippewan Middle School, Dolan, Clunan, Turn of River, Still Meadow Elementary, and Toquan. For more information, please find us at familycenters.org or on your school website. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Craig Baker. I'm the Deputy Director of DOMUS, and we're happy to be with you today. Before we get started, I want to allow my longtime colleague, Don, to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Don Reed. I'm the Chief Values Officer at the Equity Institute at DOMUS.
And Don and I have worked at DOMUS for a long time, and over that time, we have gone through several steps to become a sanctuary model organization, which in part means that we've been trained in how to be trauma responsive to help mitigate the effects of chronic stress and trauma on the young people that DOMUS serves. Childhood adversity and other forms of trauma are to the human operating system. We oftentimes use this analogy, the same way that viruses are to the computer brain or the hard drive. So we know that stress changes physically the way the brain works in all of us as human beings. It's a universal human condition. So we need to think of ways as school staff, parents, community members to help mitigate some of the negative effects of stress and trauma. So one of the tools that we have in our toolkit here at DOMUS is called community meeting. And that's part of what we do as a sanctuary model organization. Community meetings are a tool to bring groups of people together, the pulse of that group, and to really set them on a path for success at the beginning of the day or a meeting or a class period. This can be used, fairly interchangeably in the school in a classroom environment, at a family dinner table, in a counseling group, or really wherever you experience groups of people. So Don and I are going to model what community meeting would look and sound like. Obviously, or maybe not obviously. A couple of years ago, I would say obviously we'd be in a group in person, having community meeting, but this certainly can be done as we do in the past year or so at Domus, virtually as well. So we're going to get started, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the process. Don, how are you feeling today?
Craig, I'm feeling excited.
And what's the goal that you have for the day?
To be able to share some information about the community meeting with the good folks watching.
And who will you ask for help?
Craig, I'm going to ask you for help with that.
I've got you.
Thank you. And Craig, how are you feeling today?
I feel motivated.
What's a goal that you have for our time together or for today?
The goal that I have for our time together, I think, is similar to yours, in that I hope that people can walk away from this really short presentation with some, actionable items.
And who will you ask for help with that?
I'm going to ask you for help, and I'm going to ask the virtual audience members out there to help me with that as well.
And Craig, I've got your back.
Thank you. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to break down a little bit the questions that you just heard. But before we do that, Donna's going to talk a little bit about community meeting in general.
So the community meeting is really a way to provide structure for our time together and to create a healthy and predictable environment, a routine within our community. It reinforces our ability to model that we're taking care of each other, it bridges our current to our future, so that we begin projecting ourselves into the future. We use the power of the circle to do a community meeting. It helps us be able to look across the room and see what somebody who is saying I'm upset or angry looks like, so that we can learn how to read other people's emotions. It gives us a chance to name our own emotions, and we believe once we've named them, it becomes easier to manage where possible those emotions and to stay in control. It really is a set routine, so it provides predictability for the group that is involved and participating in it. So it's something that group members begin to look forward to, and can start serve as a bridge again at the beginning of your class, or transitioning from one activity to another.
So I want to pause for just a couple of seconds to give the folks out there an opportunity to either think in your head or maybe jot down some notes. Why do you think it might be important? And Don mentioned a few, he touched on a few, to ask anybody, human beings in general, how are you feeling today? So Don mentioned some of these things, and I know that from having 3 of my own kids, when you think about the experience of the really young child who's maybe having a temper tantrum and doesn't have all the language accessible to express themselves to let you know exactly what's wrong, we know that they're not going to be able to draw on those words to communicate with you effectively. So a lot of this is about building our emotional vocabulary. We start off younger in life just knowing sort of, mad, sad, and more basic feelings, but there's real nuance to feelings. So it's being able to build your emotional vocabulary and be able to express that effectively. I think as a group facilitator, a teacher, a parent, it's also really important to understand as you receive young people how they're feeling. Again, I know from my own personal experience in the classroom and with my own kids, oftentimes we may read a visual cue that might mislead us, but when we're really asking young people directly how they're feeling, we get a better sense of how best to support them in a day. And then Don talked a little bit about this too, but oftentimes just simply being able to name emotions and label them, that makes really big feelings start to become smaller feelings. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to communicate to all of our young people is that feelings are okay. right? I mean, it's a matter of human existence and our day to day, but we can't let them overwhelm us, our feelings, that we have to still be able to work to accomplish whatever goals we're having and learn how to best manage those emotions. Don, anything you wanted to add on that question of how you're feeling today?
I think that you really nailed it there, Craig. Yeah,
that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
I tried, Craig. And then our second question is talking about what is your goal for the day? And often people would look at this question, and it makes sense that you would ask kids what their goals are, right? Because it seems like we're teaching life skills, and we're trying to get kids to think about planning ahead and making a goal for that. But this is actually a little more therapeutic in the way that we ask the question. Often young people who are traumatized, young people who have been victimized, feel like they don't have control over their lives or what happens to them. They don't have a sense of self-efficacy. They believe that just crappy stuff happens, and I just have no control over my lives. You also can think of young people, adolescents, who feel like many things are out of their control because there are other people who make a lot of decisions for them. And so often traumatized folks will feel stuck. They can't imagine themselves in the future. They can't see themselves making decisions for themselves. And so by asking what your goal is, it really does a couple of things for us. One is if I've just been asked, how are you feeling today? And I realize that I'm feeling really hyper or I'm feeling angry. If I paused long enough to think about that, if I need to be successful, whether it's in class or getting through the family dinner or whatever that is, I might have to manage my emotions to be able to be successful with that. So once I've noticed in my body doing that scan that I'm feeling hyper, that my goal might be not to get sent out of class today. Or it might be to use my tools so that I can manage my my extra energy in a way that is helpful and not hindering to me. The second reason that we would ask that goal, and most importantly, is that we want to get this stuck young person to envision themselves in the future. That might be 5 minutes from now, that might be an hour and a half from now, but that I can project myself into the future. And that's the way I begin to see that I do have control over what happens to me. Craig, anything you want to add there?
Maybe just that, trying to make this again like a real universal concept. I mean, think about all of you out there listening to us today, and you've woken up in the morning and you're having a tough day, and you get in the car and you realize that your gas tank is almost on empty, and you have a scheduled meeting, and all of that stuff can be, as Don said, overwhelming. But if we all, regardless of how often we've been exposed to traumatic experience or chronic stress, if we can all, as Don has said, remain future focused, that, here's what I need to accomplish, it provides a more resilient experience for us as individuals. And then the third question we ask in community meeting is, who will you ask for help? And we certainly don't like to rank any of these questions because they're equally important. But again, in my experience, that this is perhaps the most powerful one because, again, this is true universally of human beings, but certainly young people, as Don said, who have been exposed to chronic stress or ongoing trauma can also often feel isolated and give up on the ability to be successful. And that could be in something specific like, math class where there's been a lot of struggle, or just the weight of outside stressors weighing in on you you just really feel isolated and alone, and you start to take on this sort of persona that, well, if I'm going to get through this, I need to do it on my own. And that's really not true. And we know evolutionarily that human beings were able to survive in advance simply because they were able to rely on each other. And that's programmed into all of us. And even when in a moment or a day or in a portion of our life where we feel isolated from larger community, we need to be reminded that there are people here among us that we not only can we rely on, but we need to be successful. So once a goal has been stated, we want to know who can help you with that goal. That builds community, that proves to people that work is done best as a team, and it starts to show the individual that, hey, this person has my back, this person has my back. You heard when I asked Don for help, he said, "I've got you," and that's the language that we use. And that can be a really sort of buoyant experience for me, knowing that so many people have got me. This opportunity to rely on each other is, again, can work in a family situation, obviously, in a classroom, or in the workplace, as we use it as adults, sort of colleague to colleague at Domus all the time. Don, I know that's a big one, and I probably left something out. Is there any other reason why we ask people who they'll ask for help?
You can just see when somebody asks for help and you reply, "I've got you," you can just see the smile grow on their face. And it is this way to build a relationship and to continue to build the trust. And I think it's just so important. And one of the things I love about the community meeting is that as a facilitator, I walk away knowing where everyone is. When Craig says, my goal today is to finish preparing this lesson plan, I know that he might be distracted in our time together, and part of his brain is engaged somewhere else. It allows him to refocus, but it also gives me a sense to say, like, if Craig's writing things down, it doesn't mean that he's not paying attention to me. It means that he's trying to get that out so that he can move on with his goal. And so community meetings, I think, are an amazingly helpful tool, one that we use all the time, one that we value really greatly, and we've seen great success with.
So we've covered a bunch of this stuff already, but we just wanted people to have an opportunity to actually see it. And I'll pick a couple about, and I'm sure that Don will do the same. But as we've said, providing structure and norms and something that can be expected, we know. As parents, as educators, as mental health professions, we know that allows people to thrive when they're operating in a system where they know what to expect and can feel the safety of structure. And community meeting, in part, provides that predictability. And the other point that I wanted to make, because that one's very tangible, is probably the one that's perhaps the least tangible here. But when you talk about recovery from trauma, we say here that that the group is essentially what's going to allow us to recover from chronic stress or trauma, knowing that together everybody's working together towards a common good. And that as an organization, we can use, to take from the analogy of the medical profession, these, universal precautions that allow for people to come into our schools and our homes and our institutions. And we don't know necessarily what they bring with us, but there's certain things that we can do to make people feel safe physically and emotionally. And community meeting is a small way to do that. Don, are there other ones that you wanted to highlight from this list, or
again, I love the idea, the power of the circle, Craig, in that this is about emotional competence, right? It's about being able to ask yourself, what are you feeling, and being able to manage those emotions when appropriate. But it also gives you the opportunity, because you are in a circle, or you're on Zoom like this where we can actually see each other. I begin to not only expand my own emotional vocabulary. So for example, I might say, "How are you feeling today, Craig?" And he says, "Good." And I said, "What are the feelings associated with the word good?" But I also begin to read Craig's facial expression and his body language and associate that emotion that he's talking about with those characteristics. And that's really, really important, so that we all expand our own emotional vocabulary, because it is about knowing what I'm feeling, being able to manage that. And it's also about being able to read other people's emotions and be able to take those physical and facial cues.
So I think the nice thing about community meeting is it's fairly portable. I have done this, with my own family around the dinner table. I've done it as a classroom teacher. I've done it as a staff developer with adults, and there's pieces you can take from it around just the language and seeing somebody, and instead of when your spouse or child or student comes blustering in, instead of sort of you being triggered by that and that fight flight response, that you sort of take a deep breath yourself and say, like, "Hey, how are you feeling right now?" And just getting them to connect with that feeling so that they can understand how to best navigate it. So we're excited to share the tool with people. And as always, Don and I are over here at Domus and available to talk with folks more about that. We've been happy to have you today, and want to give Don the last word.
We would encourage you to add to your toolkit. We know that as especially professionals, we've been learning a lot more about childhood adversity and the long-term health outcomes of that, especially if we don't pay attention to it. But we also need to spend time talking about how do we heal. And this is a great way to heal. We're all about building relationships with our young people. This is a wonderful way to continue to build trust and respect in a dignified way with our young people, our family members, our loved ones. And we would just really encourage you to use this very, very simple but very powerful tool to everybody's advantage.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi there. I'm Carol Schwedock of Harmony Yoga Studio, located here in Stamford and also online. And this is just a 15-minute little video to teach you a little bit about yoga. For those of you who have never done yoga, the word yoga means union of the mind and the body through the breath. And as far as I'm concerned, the breath is the most important thing. It's the first thing that happens when we come into the world, and it's the last thing that happens. And the best part is that it's always with you, always. So if you can learn a few breathing techniques and gentle movements today to help you find a little bit of calm inside, and a little bit more joy, a little bit more relaxation, that's my goal. Important to say that yoga should never be about pain. So if anything that I'm leading doesn't feel good to you, please do it your way, make it your own, and keep tuning in to breath and sensation. And if you can't breathe while you're doing something, that means that you're working too hard. It should be effortless effort, right? So just notice as you're sitting here, and by the way, I'm sitting in hero pose. I have 2 blocks underneath me, and it's elevating my hips so that my hips are higher than my knees. So for example, if you were sitting on the ground and your knees were up here, you might want to sit on a block. You could sit on 1 block, and that would help your seat so that your knees are lower than your hips, right? So either way, it doesn't really matter. And you could be sitting in a chair. And I'm going to come back to this little hero pose. It's most comfortable for me. But comfort is queen. So where you are, just make sure that you're sitting so that your head is over your shoulders and your shoulders are over your hips. And then just take your hands and let all your fingertips touch. This is just a gentle mudra to help you to find this moment and the center of you. And then let yourself either soft gaze, like looking down, or close your eyes. And let yourself just notice what is touching down. Feel your sitting bones touching down. Notice where your knees are. Notice your feet. Notice your seat. And at the same time, as you notice your feet and notice your seat, notice the length in your spine and let the crown of the head, the top of the head reach up to the heavens. So you have a really long spine. So you're not in a little slump. You're lifted up tall and then throw your ears back. So again, head over shoulders, shoulders over hips. And just find a smile on your face. Everybody can find a smile. Just notice how that even changes how you feel. And let yourself, before we begin, just notice how busy is your mind? Does your mind feel fast or slow? If you had to give yourself a number from 1 to 10, 10 being your mind feels really busy, you have lots of thoughts going on. Notice what your number is in your mind. And then notice the number in your body. Does your body feel busy? Or does your body feel slow? And if you had a number from 1 to 10, 10 being most busy in your body, like you just ran a race, just notice what your number is as you begin. I always like to kind of have a baseline when we begin a practice. And then with that smile on your face, still tailbone reaching down and crown of the head reaching up, imagine you can find a smile on your shoulders. Let anything that you're shouldering just soften. Find a smile in your heart. In the upper spine, the middle of the back, the low back. Imagine you had a big arc of a smile in your low back. You right into your belly. Right down through your hips. Feel a smile. Smile down in your knees, your ankles, and out your feet. Feel that smile in your elbows and in your wrists and in your hands. And then come back to noticing the belly. As you just begin to notice the breath. Notice that the breath comes in without you doing anything. And the breath goes out without you doing anything. Notice that the breath comes in and there's a gentle pause. That the breath goes out. There's just this gentle pause. Tuning your mind's attention to noticing breath is a great way to decrease any anxiety in the body. Just simply knowing that your mind is not in charge. That your mind is the secretary to your heart. Keeping that smile on your face. Once more, notice the breath comes in, there's a pause. The breath goes out, there's a pause. As we begin to find a little bit more of a conscious breath, take both hands on your belly. Inhale through your nostrils and puff your belly out with a big breath. And then exhale it out with a sigh. Feel the belly go in and up. Fill the belly, expand the low back. And exhale. Good. Feel low back, belly, expand. Like a smile on your belly, smile on your face. And exhale. Now take your hands onto your rib cage and let your middle fingers touch. See if you can feel as you inhale belly into ribs, the middle fingers separate just a little bit. And then exhaling and the middle fingers touch again. And you're just watching the breath in the belly and the ribs. And the ribs and the belly. Now take your left hand on your heart, right hand on the belly. 3-part yogic breath called the Dirga pranayama, the Dirga breath. You're going to inhale from the belly to the ribs up to the heart. And then exhale from the heart to the ribs to the belly. Inhale, filling up belly, ribs, heart with a golden ball of sunshine. And exhale, heart, ribs, and belly goes in and up. Let's add on some pauses. So you're going to exhale everything out. This is called 16 seconds of clarity. So you inhale for a count of 4, fill up belly, ribs, and heart. And see if you can hold the breath out, feel really full. Exhale, send the breath down, heart, ribs, belly. Feel the belly go in and up. Inhale, fill the breath, belly, ribs, heart for a count of 4. Hold the breath out, 2, 3, 4. See the breath, heart, ribs, belly. Hold it in. If the pausing doesn't feel good, just inhale for a count of 8 and exhale for a count of 8. You wouldn't do the pausing if you were pregnant or if you had recent abdominal surgery, but otherwise it's a wonderful way to come to the present moment. So inhale for a count of 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale out the mouth. Hold in, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to do some sun breaths. So you inhale, sweep your arms up, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, arms down, 2, 3, 4. Belly in, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, sweep up like the sunrise. Hold it out. Open up your fingers like rays of sunshine. Good. Exhale, bring your hands down. Then hold the breath in. 2, 3, 4. Inhale, sweep up. Smile on your face. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold it in. 2, 3, 4. Just pause for a moment. Hands on the thighs. Just notice how it feels to become centered within yourself, to be really present, to just notice breath and notice sensation. And let yourself reach your hands back behind you as you inhale. Find a smile on your face. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Hook the thumbs and round the back. Let the neck go, let the jaw go. Hold it in. 2, 3, 4. So this is called seated cat and cow. You're opening up. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2. Make sure your neck is soft. And exhale round into this little Halloween cat. Hold it in. 2, 3, 4. 4. Good. Inhale, expand, smile on your face, raise and sunshine out your fingers. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Beautiful. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold it in. 2, 3, 4. One more. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold it in. Nice. And again, just pause and notice how it feels. Begin to shake out your arms. Shake out your arms. Shake out your wrists. Shake out your shoulders. Feel energy moving around. And then just pause. Can you feel that? So that is what we call in yoga the prana. It's the energy. It's the tingling. It's the butterflies. It's the pixie dust. Sometimes in yoga, we want to calm the energy. Sometimes we want to get the energy moving. So it depends on what kind of breath you want to do. But for today, we're just finding that calming breath. So let's breathe the arms up overhead. Take your hands behind your head. Again, you could do this in sitting. You could also do it in standing. You're going to lean to the right. And feel that whole left side of the body opening up. And imagine you could breathe from your left foot. Imagine a light bulb going off on the right side of your brain. So you inhale up that left side, all the way up to that bright light on the right side of the brain. Inhale. And then exhale, send it all back down that left side of the body, out the left foot. Inhale from left foot, all the way up through the right side of the brain. Exhale, send it back down. Ha, and I like to find the sound ha, which is the fire energy inside of us. Inhale, fill up. Exhale, ha. It's kind of fun to make some sounds sometimes. Letting go. Inhale. And exhale, ha. Take a big breath in. Good. Come back to center. Float the hands down. Just notice if the left side feels any more alive than the right side. Bring your shoulders up by your ears. Make a prune face. And exhale, ha. Let everything go. Inhale, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And exhale, ha. So good to let go of shoulder tension. Inhale. Ha. Good. Ha. Ha. Good. You could go slow or fast. Ha. 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 One more. Inhale. Ha. And as you pause, notice the space between your shoulders and your ears. Maybe your shoulders feel a little bit more relaxed. Come back to the sun breaths. Inhale your hands up for 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Bring them down. Hold it in. 2, 3, 4. Breathe them up. Reach up as you plug the tailbone down. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Good. Exhale. Hold it in. One more time. Inhale. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Nice. Hold it in. Beautiful. Breathe your arms up. You're going to bring your hands behind your head again. You could clasp opposite hands on top. So if that feels weird, it's really good to find balance in your body. Bring your hands behind your head. Yeah. If that isn't comfortable, you could bring your hands on your shoulders. But let yourself lift up tall and lean to the left. Press the head into the hands. Imagine this golden sunshine from right foot all the way up through the left brain. Left brain down to right foot. Ha. It's fun to make sound. Right foot up to left brain. Let go of anything that clogs you up. Ha. Good. Right foot to left brain. Ha. 2 more. Ha. Nice. Last one. Ha. Big breath. Good. Coming back to center. Float the hands down. Check inside. Feel sensation. Feel the center of you. Notice your baseline now. Has anything shifted in your mind? Does it still feel fast or slow? And what's your number now as you are in the middle of practice? Has anything shifted? What about in your body? Has anything shifted, fast or slow? Good. Opening up your eyes. So we did arching and rounding. We did side to side. Now we're going to do some twisting. You're going to put your hands on your shoulders. As you inhale, you turn to the left. Exhale to the right. Inhale left. Exhale right. You keep your hips forward. This is really a nice opening, a nice opener for sensation, for digestion in the body. It's great for the back, right? And if you want, you could let it out with an S sound, like a snake, which is helping your lungs. Good. Following your head side to side. Go as slow or as fast as feels good to you. Good. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just pause and feel. Feel the energy in your body. Feel the present moment. Notice the breath. Keep plugging the tailbone down, reach the crown of the head up. Let's do a twist. Take your right hand to your left thigh. Reach your left hand back behind you. Lift up tall. That's really important. You don't want to slump. Lift up tall. And then look out over your left shoulder. Take a big breath in. Fill belly, ribs, heart. Heart, ribs, belly. Belly, ribs, heart. Heart, ribs, belly. One more. Take a big breath in. Exhale, come back to center. Just pause, notice. Take your left hand to your right thigh, right hand back behind you. Lift it up tall, draw your ears back. Look over your right shoulder. Inhale, belly, ribs, heart. Exhale, heart, ribs, belly. Inhale, belly, ribs, heart. Send that energy up. Exhale, send it down. Good, take one more. Nice, take a big breath in. And then come back to center, close your eyes, and just pause right here. Again, notice your baseline, filling it up, noticing, has anything shifted in your mind? Has anything slowed? But what about in your body? Has anything shifted? As we complete our practice today, bring your hands to your heart. Let the head bow to the heart. And just set an intention as you leave this practice for whatever it is you want to take with you. I am, and fill in the blank. Maybe it's I am calm, I am peaceful, I am centered, I'm happy. Whatever that is, whatever you want to cultivate, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So breathe it into every cell. I am. Exhale it out there. We say namaste at the end of a practice, which means I bow to you, you bow to me. And when we're both in that same place, we are one. Thank you for inviting me to be your teacher. Namaste.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Ortiz Schwartz, and I'm a child adolescent psychiatrist, and I work with Silver Hill Hospital. And today I want to talk with you all a little bit about screen use in teenagers and how it affects people's brains, and also the effects of social media. I'm going to share a presentation with you. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about screen use in teenagers. When is screen time too much, as well as some of the effects of social media. So this is very helpful in terms of looking at different aspects of social media. This is from DQ Institute, and it talks about different aspects of social media. It talks about digital citizenship, which is the ways in which individuals can help and build and manage their online identity. It talks about learning how to manage privacy, how to be thoughtful and use critical thinking in approaching screens, understanding the digital footprint, and that those are things that will carry on. So understanding that when you put something online, it's going to have consequences in the future. Understanding how to be kind to others online, managing safety and security to prevent people from hacking, managing bullying online, and also very important about managing screen time and making sure that it's not too much to the point that it takes away from other day-to-day activities. So we use electronics for everything pretty much, from school to gaming, entertainment, and also for socialization with our family and friends. So they become ubiquitous, they become everywhere in all sorts of devices. For gaming specifically, there are some positives with gaming, including that some people can, some studies have shown that there is better eye-hand coordination. It can help for visual motor skills, and it can actually help people in terms of being able to do something in a very focused manner for a period of time. It can also help with shifting from one activity to the other. It can help with spatial skills, and it can be a training tool. Somebody can be online learning how to, drive a car, and eventually may become easier in the future when they're able to drive in real life. So there could be other reasons why gaming can be helpful. It can also be helpful in some treatment instances, but by and large, there are some positives to it. So I just wanted to start with that, so people don't feel like this is about, saying that all those, gaming or social media are necessarily, evil in and of themselves, but they're tools to be used, and sometimes the tools can be used for helpful benefits, and sometimes when things are too much, it can become a problem. So some of the good things that teenagers get out of being able to enjoy a gaming experience is that they have a sense of control of what they're doing. And a lot of times teenagers and middle schoolers, they have very little control over their lives because a lot of things are being told, or they have to do so many expectations. So being able to be free and do on screen something that can be fun and that allows them to feel good about themselves. They can connect with others around mutual interest. And they can also have a team goal if they're sharing the experience with other kids. That means that if they're doing a team challenge, they can feel happy about the other people. And it also engages a little bit the imagination as they get to know different characters and becomes part of something fun to share. Problems include social development. A lot of people who are primarily interacting through screens, and it's funny that I'm having this presentation on a screen, but when it becomes too much, people can actually struggle with their social development. It becomes a little bit more awkward to interact with, peers in real life. There could be a certain sexual or other stereotyping in terms of some of the messages that are in certain video games and in certain social platforms that might not necessarily be things that people may be exposed to on their day-to-day, but they're more exposed more frequently in those environments. This is a big one, especially for social media, where there may be a significant amount of comparisons. And this is significant because there are a lot of people who then struggle with anxiety or even depression if they feel that they cannot compare to others because, other people are spending so much time putting amazing pictures and curating these personas that are very well put together, and they may feel like they are not up to speed, that they have to do a lot to keep up with others. And the fact that these are available 24/7, there's no stopping if somebody wants to continue. The gaming, the platforms, the social medias are there pretty much all the time for people who want to engage with that. So again, they're in all settings, whether gaming is streaming or, interference with schoolwork or dinner. These kinds of things can be highly addictive. For games, something that's really important is that games are particularly addictive because depending on the level of challenge and the level of skill, there is something for everyone. If a person is very good at playing a game, they can be very engaged and they can stay in this flow zone. But even a person who doesn't know the game, if they start at levels where they can feel that they're doing good, that they're doing well and master those levels, they're getting some enjoyment out of gaming. So it can be really addictive because they can help people in different areas. So you can be from a novice to an expert and you can get something out of it. Other things that make the games more addictive is in-game rewards, like special things that are only available for limited times. Near miss, there's an experience like you are almost there, you're almost trying to better yourself in a particular game or skill, so you always keep on doing more and more of it. You also get to take a look into the future. For example, in real life, if a person, gets into a car crash, well, that's the end of that moment, of that situation. But in a game, you just start over. So, and the fact that you can keep on going and going and going, there's no stopping, and that can be very addictive, that you just keep on going and doing things. You also don't have to wait long for the next game. Let's say if you are able to miss on a game, or you can always go and start a new one. And it is also very addictive because you miss out when other friends are playing, and kids play with games. People play with games all over the world and with friends from all over the world as well. So those can be really more of the addictive components for the game. The other piece is that in the brain, there's a neurochemical that has to do with pleasure, and it's called dopamine. And the levels of dopamine that are released in certain activities, like riding a bike, are feel good chemicals. But things like playing video games can release a lot more dopamine than would do other activities that take longer time to work. They release a lot more adrenaline, they release a lot more dopamine, and actually that increases our wanting to do it more and can become quite entertaining and also quite addictive. So in terms of comparison to other substances, video games are kind of high up there in terms of increasing dopamine levels much more than happens in nature. So given that understanding, how much time is a good amount of screen time? And the research has shown that people who play or have screen time of less than 1 hour, they pretty much, in terms of the social activity, I'm not talking about school or homework or other things, but just for social activities, if people are spending less than an hour on screen time, they probably are not very social to begin with. And people who spend more than 3 hours in social activities per day, social or gaming activities, probably will not do as well in terms of their happiness and adjustment and so forth. So again, less than 1 hour is a problem. More than 3 hours is often a problem as well. So what typically happens when people are using more for hours and hours? They can have problem use, they can have gaming disorder, they may not be able to control the amount of things. They may not be able to get their homework and other things done, or spend time with friends and family. And it can lead to problems that are very similar to other kinds of addictive behavior, like gambling and substance use. For some kids, about 88% of people who game might have some level of gaming disorder. It can interfere with sleep. And sleep is very important because teenagers' brains are very prone to having sleep dysregulation. That's the way that their wiring is adjusting itself. And when people start losing sleep in the teenage years, they can sometimes develop chronic sleep problems for the rest of their lives. Teenagers, by and large, like to, go to sleep later, wake up later. And during that period of time where the brain is resetting, those patterns are resetting, it's important to maintain the sleep. So things like watching things with blue lights. Screens have blue lights that interfere with our sleep patterns. And when people don't turn off their screens an hour before bedtime, or even get up in the middle of the night to check their phone, they're actually telling their brain, hey, it's daytime, you should be alert, you should be awake. And people who have electronics at night or in their room are not able to get restful sleep. The other thing that can happen that's a negative is multitasking in terms of people are not giving full attention to the task at hand because they're so worried about what is going on with their phone, their notification, and other things. So it's really, really important to make sure that that people can focus on the things that need focus, like homework, schoolwork, etc. There are motor vehicle accidents and other accidents that happen because of poor attention. It can certainly have longer term issues with mood, things like anxiety, depression, irritability. Those are, concerns. And as teenagers' brains are developing, they have less self-control on certain activities. So it's harder for teenagers to feel like they can control themselves with certain things. So sometimes it's helpful to have support from others or even some apps to decrease the amount of impulsive gaming that is going on. So for example, if you're setting out to do a paper, but you find yourself online, then that can be a problem. But sometimes you can put some apps to allow you to, okay, I can do homework. And then when I'm done, then I can do my gaming rather than the other way around. Sleep is very important. Sleep can be affected even by an hour of screen time. So it's really, really important to try to balance out the needs for sleep and making sure that turning off the blue light, those screens with plenty of time. When people sometimes are addicted to gaming and screen use, they don't feel normal unless they're constantly on their screens. And when they stop, they feel anger, almost like a withdrawal effect. And sometimes they get into arguments with their loved ones because they don't want to stop using. So it can be really problematic. For social media, some of the concerns that come up have to do with people sometimes feel either too safe online just because there is a screen, and they may do things that they may not do in real life, like overshare, engage in negative activity, cyberbullying, or just being unkind online. And that goes both ways. People can attack a person, and you can also get into the false idea that it's okay to publish certain things online. So I think it's important to know the balances and knowing, what people are doing, what they're sharing with, what will live online forever, what could be shared to somebody else, and know that almost everything that you put online can be traceable, can be found, even things that, live, in apps that can disappear, and even things that are encrypted. Eventually, there are ways of tracking those things down, and there are people who have lost, prestigious college acceptances because of their online behavior that has shown some very poor judgment, and that has been shared with the world. So it's important to know. For parents, the things that can be helpful for individuals is to help people set their own boundaries and meeting your kid where they are. If they need a lot of help, you offer them a lot of help. If you need extra things like apps that could help monitor the time or set up some of the supports and put them in place, that's great. And depending on the age and maturity level of the individual, to know and to ultimately try to help the person teach themselves how to control their use appropriately. And that also starts with very good examples, to set a good example for your kids. When it comes to gaming, it's important to play together with your kids. Have them teach you how they're playing and gaming. Watch them sometimes for fun. It can be a bonding activity. And even if it's something that mostly your kids do, it still would be nice for you to share in that aspect of their lives. It's also important to balance it with other activities, gaming and social media time, and to really spend time doing things together without electronics being on board. So that would be really important to set up times for dinner, for outings, for fresh air, for being in nature together with low or minimal interference from electronics. By and large, the studies have shown that with social media, there's an increase in anxiety in individuals. There is also decrease in social skills compared to people who don't use a lot of social media. And there's been other individuals that have had such bad reactions from negative online, you know, problems, including severe bullying and even suicide that can be traced to significant bullying online. Lastly, I'd like to leave you with this piece of information. So beware what you share. If you wouldn't be happy if your grandmother saw what is being published online because it would be embarrassing or shameful or whatnot, then probably you shouldn't be posting it. So it's important to use good judgment and to also create a culture with you, your friends, your school, where you are contributing to the positivity and not adding to the negativity of social media and the gaming culture. Thank you very much for your time today, and I hope that this has been a helpful and thought-provoking discussion. Bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Goldberg, and I'm a senior at the Academy of Information Technology and Engineering. And I'm a student member of the Stanford Vaping Task Force.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Samuel. I am a junior at AITE and also a member of the Stanford Vaping Task Force.
Hi, I'm Rocco Lucia. I'm a sophomore at AITE, and I'm also a member of this on the Stanford Vaping Task Force.
When Sam, Rocco, and I joined the task force back in summer 2020, we conducted a survey on teen vaping throughout Stanford public schools and beyond. Results indicated that there's a stark gap between anti-vaping education in schools and anti-vape environments and practices, especially during COVID-19.
Today, we will be presenting a modified version of the Vaping Task Force curriculum we students created for middle school audiences. We have presented to over 100 students so far and hope to continue these presentations to reach many more.
We hope that you can take something new away from this presentation and add onto your knowledge base about vaping, nicotine, and their dangerous nature. Additional resources and information can be found on stanfordyouthservices.org/vaping.
All right, let's go straight into our survey. So as Emma mentioned in the very beginning, we conducted a survey when we first started to see what topics we could highlight in our curriculum. And some questions that we asked were, have your parents ever talked to you about vaping? And have you ever felt a pressure to try vaping? We saw that 63.8% said yes, that their parents have talked about vaping, but a huge chunk, 36.2%, had said no. So just want to show that the education was still needed and that it was crucial that we made sure we included lots of information for both students and adults so that they could learn more about the dangerous effects of vaping and all the components of it. Not only that, we asked, have you ever felt a pressure to try vaping? And 61.4% said no, which is big, yes, but 38.6% still said no. So that peer pressure was still there, and it went to show that we still needed to put action in place to fix the peer pressure that's going on with vaping and drugs in general.
Another part of the survey was how prevalent do you believe vaping is in your community, which was on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not prevalent at all and 5 being the most prevalent. We had around 45% say 4 and 25% say 5. So a big chunk of people say that vaping is prevalent in the community, which is a problem. It means that it's seen and maybe vaping is used every day around Stanford. So that was definitely a part of the survey that we used to say, all right, we're going to create a curriculum to educate more about vaping.
In addition to measuring the prevalence of vaping in our community, we also looked at students and young adults' knowledge of the components of vape devices. So, with that, we asked, do you know what ingredients are in vapes? And about 65% said no, which is definitely a point piece for further education. So, along with that, we also asked teens where most of them were getting their vapes, if they knew people that vaped, or if they did that themselves. With about 62% saying that it was coming from an older sibling or friend, which is definitely a very important piece of information since the cycle of addiction is going to be reinforced in those situations by people close to them. And then also about 32% said that they were getting their devices from convenience stores or gas stations, which more so has to do with leniency and fake IDs. So, along with that, we're going to talk about what actually vaping is. It's a pretty simple question when you hear it out loud, but we notice that a lot of students don't know what's within a vape. So, regardless of if we're talking about Juuls, puff bars, or any other electronic cigarette, all vapes have similar components that make them work. And so, if we're going to go ahead and define vaping, that would be the inhaling and exhaling of a vapor containing nicotine and flavoring that's produced by a device for that purpose. So, one of the first things that we're looking at here is the components or parts of a vape. That includes a battery, atomizer, e-liquid or e-juice, a cartridge, and aerosol. So the battery serves as the energy source of a vaping device, whereas the atomizer is heating up the e-liquid that's within the cartridge, and the cartridge is that tank that's holding the e-liquid. And within that liquid itself, that contains a lot of the dangerous chemicals, which include the addictive chemical nicotine and other flavors, which we'll talk about later. And then, of course, aerosol, which heats the e-liquid inside of the device and creates that gas that's inhaled into the body and out into the air. And aerosol actually leaves droplets behind in your lungs, which can be really dangerous to health, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Another thing that we want to educate our students on is the comparisons between cigarettes, which has been widely shown to be perceived as very negative to our generation, and comparing that with vaping devices. So one pack of cigarettes contains 20, and that's about 20 milligrams of nicotine. When we look at Juul pods, that's almost double the amount of nicotine and the equivalent of 41 cigarettes. And then a puff bar, which is a disposable vaping device, that contains over 15 milligrams of nicotine, which is equal to about 50 cigarettes. So another thing with vaping that we need to consider is the differences between different types of gas and definitions of that. So when you go ahead and define a gas, that's a substance that has indefinite expansion, meaning that when you put it into a container, it's going to spread out until it's mixed with the environment. When talking about a vapor, it's a little bit more ambiguous and can mean the same thing as a gas, but it's also oftentimes used to refer to a visible exhalation, such as steam or fog. And then lastly, we have aerosol, which applies to vaping, and that's a mixture of liquid particles that are suspended in a gas. And instead of just mixing with air like a pure gas, aerosols can leave droplets behind, which can again be very dangerous to human health. So with that, we're also looking at some common ingredients within vapes, which students in our survey indicated that they didn't know. So of course, vaping devices include nicotine, which is the highly addictive substance that negatively affects teen brain development. They also include ultrafine particles, heavy metals, and flavorings such as diacetyl, which is a chemical that's been linked to popcorn lung disease, which is pretty serious. And then of course, carcinogens, such as acetaldehyde, which has been used in cleaning products, and formaldehyde, which is a common preservative. We're now going to take a look at the marketing of vaping devices and how they get teenagers hooked.
Yeah, so as Emma said, we're going to take a little bit look at marketing. So the marketing of vape products are geared towards younger audiences and teens, especially those in middle and high schools. For example, a Juul device is only $20 and Juul pods range from $5 to $15, and most disposable vape devices are around $15 as well. You can see how cheap the price is, and that is a marketing tool vaping companies use to keep you hooked. Because of the FDA's enforcement policy on unauthorized flavor cartridge-based e-cigarettes, there are no more flavored products for Juul products, which is a good thing. Less people are likely to buy the device in the first place, knowing that there are no more flavors that include like that were included mango, mint, and vanilla for the Juul products. But there are still many other vape devices with thousands of intriguing flavors that taste like candy and sweets. Overall, from the cheap prices, accessibility, and many flavors among vaping devices are just some of the reasons teens and young adults start to vape and potentially become addicted. On this next slide, you'll see a bunch of pictures, and just these pictures alone speak 1,000 words as to one of the biggest reasons why teens and young adults are so attracted to vaping devices. Creating a buzz on social media through ads and short videos, sponsoring music videos and events, and introducing appealing effects are the four main ways vaping companies grab your attention to get you hooked. Vaping has increased 78% in the last year for high schoolers and 48% in middle schools. Vaping company ads promote their products, often use the phrase healthier than. Don't let them fool you, because this is a tactic they use to get you and keep you hooked. So now we're going to talk a little bit about addiction. It's really important to know how vulnerable the teen brain is susceptible to addiction. So what is addiction? What comes to mind when you hear the word addiction, and how would you describe the addiction? Well, according to Stanford Medicine, addiction is a long-term disease where an individual has an overwhelming desire to find and use drugs, even though there are dangerous consequences. Addiction is a disease because it results in a long-term changes in the brain structure, function, and behaviors caused by drug use. So now we're going to take a look at a video that explains a little bit more about that.
It's important to understand that everyone in the world has addictions, or rather natural addictions, to things that are good, like food, water, and sleep. These natural addictions are important for our health and survival, and without them, we would not hunger or crave the things we need to survive. Now, we aren't exactly born with these natural addictions. Our body creates them. Let's look at an example. When you bite into an apple, your brain says, "Yum." Your brain recognizes that this apple is good for you. It has nutrition, vitamins, and gives your body the energy it needs to survive. Whenever the brain recognizes something that's good, it releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine causes you to experience pleasure. It's what makes you feel good, like when biting into an apple. The brain releases this dopamine in order to teach the body that this is healthy and good for your survival, and that it should remember to do it again. Now, there are other things we do that can release the pleasurable dopamine, like playing video games, exercising, or reading a good book. However, the amount of dopamine released during these activities is less than what's released when we eat food. The brain does this so it can recognize which is more important. So if you go 2 days without reading a book, or 2 days without eating food, your body is going to crave the food over the book. As such, your brain creates what's called a hierarchy of survival, which ranks how important each of these things is to your survival. Now, there are some things that will not cause the release of dopamine, like eating soap or punching yourself in the face. The brain knows that these things are not good, and therefore does not release the pleasurable dopamine because your brain does not want you to do it again. Now, let's look at alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs. These are all classified carcinogens, proven to cause cancer and other fatal diseases. Now, your brain should recognize that these things are harmful to your body. However, these substances have special chemical characteristics that fool the brain into releasing dopamine, oftentimes in much greater amounts than the body has ever experienced before. Because of this, the body is fooled into thinking that these things are good and important, sometimes even more important than food, water, or sleep, and consequently hijacks the #1 spot in your survival hierarchy. So now, if you go 2 days without eating or 2 days without drinking alcohol, your body will actually crave the alcohol over the food. This is an extreme case of addiction where the person addicted believes that they will die if they don't get it. The severity of the addiction depends on where the alcohol or drug lies within your hierarchy of survival, and can increase even with casual use. Research shows that people under the age of 21 are at the highest risk of having their survival hierarchy hijacked. Why? Because their brains are still growing and developing and are hypersensitive to false shocks of dopamine caused by these harmful substances. By 21, the brain is more fully developed and mature, and the survival hierarchy becomes more permanent and less susceptible to getting hijacked. The flip side is that once you are 21, it becomes very difficult to remove these harmful substances from your survival hierarchy. Studies show that 9 out of 10 people who currently struggle with addiction started drinking, smoking, or using before the age of 21. Understanding addiction as a preventable disease can help save millions of lives. The decision to wait until 21 could mean the difference between a life enslaved by addiction or a life full of success and accomplishment. Want to learn more? Visit us at wait21.org.
So as you can see from this video, drugs can release dopamine and lead to the hierarchy of reward. And that dopamine is an important chemical that tells the brain eating food, drinking, and sleeping leads to pleasure. The teenage brain is more vulnerable to that sensation and release of dopamine. And 90% of adults receiving treatment for substance abuse started in their teenage years. So now we're going to talk a little bit about nicotine, and Sam is going to take that away.
To reiterate what has already been said, we know that we release dopamine whenever we do something that we say like yum, like eating an apple, that releases pleasure, and and the problems with drugs, it is wires our brains to continuously search for the reward circuit because of these high levels of dopamine that is released given the consumptions of these drugs. And we also have an increased level of tolerance as well, given these high levels of dopamine release, making us when we attempt to get away from these drugs, it becomes very much harder because we want to crave it more in the same way that we crave food or whatever else causes us pleasure. Beyond that, nicotine raises heart rate and increases blood pressure. Now, it could also lead to hypertension and other heart diseases. And I kind of mentioned this before, but nicotine stops normal neurotransmitters because there are billions of neurotransmitters that helps our brain function every day, and they're overall responsible for sending information across your brain. So it just goes to show that these types of drugs are very dangerous to get involved. And as I said in the video, we recommend that you don't attempt to try it, especially given that teenagers are more susceptible, given that their brains are still developing. Brains continue developing to their age of 25, but of course, waiting to 21 is the best decision than waiting when you're an adolescent. In the next slide, we have a picture of the brain, and it just gives a clear picture of what is going on in the reward circuit. We have the prefrontal cortex, the nucleus accumbens, and this is overall, the dopamine is released from the ventral tegmental area, or the VTA, and all of that gets released to the other areas because the prefrontal cortex is responsible for your focus and your overall attention, while your nucleus accumbens is responsible for your motor function. So all of these parts help in the craving in a way, because when the dopamine is released, the nucleus accumbens pushes us to keep doing something. So when a student is addicted to using vaping and is having a hard time getting away from it, and although they know that it's wrong to go out and buy another vape product, despite the dangers of it, it's because of that nucleus accumbens that's pushing us, and then the prefrontal cortex that's going to help us with that overall focus on getting this specific drug, and then our hippocampus, that memory of the euphoric and overall content feeling that we get from having that large amount of dopamine release and dopamine release. And furthermore, something that is very crucial from this is your serotonin is also lowered by that increased level of dopamine. So there's chances that you will get depressed, have high rates of anxiety or sleep troubles. And that's further explained in the next slide with the nicotine withdrawals, where we see what happens. You may have depression, difficulty concentrating, nicotine cravings, all because of the low serotonin levels and the effects of nicotine on our developing brains.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about quitting. On this next slide, there are resources with websites and numbers to text to begin your journey on quitting. And Emma is going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide with our new website.
All right, so our website at stanfordyouthservices.org/vaping has a bunch of resources for parents, educators, teens. It also has a lot of curriculum and short videos that will really educate you more beyond this presentation. So I will go ahead and just do a quick walkthrough of our website in just a moment. But in the meantime, I wanted to thank Sam, Rocco, and Ingrid for making this possible. Of course, other members of the Stanford Vaping Task Force and the Mayor's Youth Leadership Council at AITE. So if you have any questions, we can definitely have you email ingrid.gillespie@liberationprograms.org and at the phone number here. This QR code will also bring you straight to our website. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of that in just a moment. So as you can see, this is our website. We have parental resources, education materials, quitting resources, and videos. And we'll take you down straight to the bottom. As you can see, we have a lot of striking but highly sourced facts, all different types of videos and ways we can take action. So also things about public support and legislation dealing with vaping, current progress, progress to be made. So there's a lot of resources here. We all highly encourage you to visit our website. And with that, we would like to thank you and encourage you to stay educated, stay informed, and stay healthy. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Tanisha Rankin, Behavioral Health Clinician at the Community Health Center Middletown location. Thank you for having me. I currently provide individual, family, and group therapy in an integrated primary care setting with patients across the lifespan. The Community Health Center is a federally qualified health center providing services in high need communities throughout the state of Connecticut, including school based health centers and satellite locations. The Community Health Center is designated in high need communities, caring for approximately 28 million patients annually, 93% of which are designated below 200% poverty line. Today, I wanted to discuss physical and emotional safety. Now, why does this matter? Physical and emotional safety becomes very important in improving relationships between parents and children and is essential as teenagers are trying to establish their individuality and independence and separate from their parents, forming their own sense of self. It is also important in improving relationships with family, friends, and increasing use of more effective ways to reduce conflict. Overall, establishing a sense of safety and trust can assist teens in regulating their emotions as they develop who they are and help parents in supporting this growth while providing structure and managing behaviors that may be impacting functioning at home and in school. In my clinical work, I have observed warning signs that kids and parents may miss. It has an impact on teenagers functioning both interpersonally, which means with their friends, and in school, which can include problems academically, problems responding to authority, which then impacts their academic performance on a whole. This often leads to frustration from parents as they are having difficulty managing these behaviors, resulting in conflict in the home. Parents, most of you are well intentioned in your attempts to help your children progress through the teenage phase of their lives. At times, in this well intentioned effort, you unknowingly project your own fears, insecurities, past experiences on your teenager's growth. This can create an emotional distance, and teenagers, you can often then transfer this form of interaction to other adults and interpersonal relationships on a whole. Teens, sometimes your experience of shame, fear, lack of self confidence, and not having a place to openly discuss your feelings without being judged can result in a feeling of lack of emotional safety, which you then express in the only way you know how. Another aspect I've observed in my work with families is the mistrust in each other experienced by both parents and children, and a continuous attempt to have control over the situation from both parties, which then results in more conflict in the home. What can be done? One of the most important things I want parents to remember is the term validation. Now, what is validation? Validation is one of the most important things when discussing emotional safety and building a trusting relationship. It means listening and showing you're there, whether or not you agree with their feelings. Validating your children's feelings do not mean you agree with what they say, and it does not mean you agree with their actions. It simply means you are letting them know, I am here and your feelings are important. Now, another thing I want to say about validation, this is a question I often get. With validation, am I not then supposed to put boundaries in or correct my child's behavior? You can definitely have validation and boundaries co-occurring. They're not mutually exclusive. As a parent, you can both express validation for how your child is feeling and expressing their actions, and also correct their actions. Another thing I wanted you to think about is consistency. And I term consistency as simply be there all the time. Be validating repeatedly. Have your child's back, in essence. Let them know they can depend on you to be there and be their protector. This will help in establishing trust in your relationship. And again, this does not mean you agree with every decision they will make when you show up. It just means you are consistently validated and loving without conditions. And loving without conditions does not mean you're in agreement with their decisions. Another aspect of consistency I want to discuss is you can be there in uncomfortable situation to discuss uncomfortable things. At times, parents, especially as your children are progressing through this new phase of their life, there are things that are going to be uncomfortable for you to discuss, things that may have been different from your own experience at this age, but try to be a safe space for your children and not needing to dictate how this safe space is used. Remember, safety and trust is not perfection. And as your child grows and develops, this safety and trust is going to evolve and look differently. Another thing I want to discuss in this is something I term whose stuff is this? Parents earlier mentioned well intentioned rules and structure, often put in place for your child's success. It is normal for you as parents to bring your own experiences to this relationship, to bring your own fears and your own stuff to parenting, often trying to stop your children from making certain mistakes. This can lead to attempts to over control your children and ends up in a breakdown of your relationship. You can establish mutual respect without control. Remember, what you want for your kids is not wrong. The issue often arises in how do you go about getting it in a way that's collaborative and not each person trying to take control of the situation. And remember again, as I mentioned probably 2 or 3 times, trust and safety is not perfection. Now, resources. You're probably listening to this presentation and thinking, how do I know when to ask for help? How do I know when outside resources may be needed? If you have tried all the skills you have in your box, everything you know how to do, talk to trusted family members and friends, and still feel the sense of not having control of the situation and just frustration and continued breakdown in the relationship between you and your child, probably feeling, I've given up, I do not know what else to do, this may be the time for you to seek resources. It is okay to ask for help. Asking for help is actually a way for you to have control over the situation. There are a lot of great agencies in your communities and people in the counseling field and in the schools who wants to provide help and support for your family. You may seek therapy for your child individually, therapy for you and your child, or therapy for you. Therapy for you as parents may look like support, parenting skills, just little tips for you to be able to manage your own feelings with what your child is going through. One of the resources we often tell parents about is 211. 211 is a great resource just to tell you about resources in your area, emergency resources, and it also has mobile crisis that will come out to where you are to provide necessary assessment that may be needed at that time on an emergency basis. The Community Health Center also provides services in the Stamford and Norwalk area. There's a Community Health Center at 5th Street, which is at 22 5th Street in Stamford, and another location at 141 Franklin Street. In Norwalk, there's a Community Health Center location at 49 Day Street. Currently, there's also an affiliate, the Child Guidance Center, which is located at 103 West Broad Street in Stamford, and also 401 Shipon Avenue in Stamford. If you want to know additional information about possible locations in our school-based health centers in your area, you can go to chc1.com for more information. Thank you for listening. I hope this presentation answered questions you may have had. One thing I do want you to remember is that on this journey of raising your child and building trust with your child, it is not a straight line. Change is never a straight line, and that is always something I echo to both parents and teenagers. There will be different changes along the way. I think the best thing I can impart on you is to remember that. Remember that this is not perfection. And remember the importance of validation, consistency, and just managing your own stuff. This will also go on to help your child as they develop their own relationships and keep their selves safe. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for Keeping Your Cool When It Counts. My name is Krista Rizzo, and I am going to be your facilitator for today. In our brief time together, we're going to talk about strong emotions, triggers for how we keep our cool, the use of distraction in helping us navigate our own feelings and emotions, self-soothing techniques, what to do when you're angry, the need to proceed with caution, right? Sometimes we have to check in with ourselves before we move into the next thing, and how your employee assistance program can help you move through your strong emotions or any of the things you might need today. What are strong emotions, right? Some of us have a lot of them, and some of us are kind of iffy on others, right? Think about it. Fear is a strong emotion, love, disgust, rejection, guilt, anger, sadness. There are a lot of different kinds of emotions that we all have and that we are all experiencing, especially in times of uncertainty, which we have been living in for the last 14 months. So feeling any one of these feelings or having them simultaneously is not uncommon or unusual. We just have to figure out how to work through them or move through them. Are you somebody who reacts or responds to your emotions or to a situation or maybe to an interaction that you may or may not have been having? Do they get you in hot water? Are you somebody who, if you're having an interaction or you get an email or a text, you have to immediately respond without thinking about it? Are you somebody who says, oh, I wish I would have responded differently and had a little bit more time instead of reacted, right? There's a big difference between reacting and responding. And so knowing that difference and being able to step back in times of heightened anxiety or stress or emotions getting the best of you, being able to step back and saying, okay, I just need a minute, I need to breathe, I need to figure out how to respond to this situation rather than, casting off the first thing that comes to your mind and then regretting it later. So think about the kinds of emotions that you have and the way that you have responded or reacted to those situations in your past. And how can you correct that moving forward if you are particularly a reactor? What's to be expected when these emotions arise in your life, whether it's at home or within your community or at work or even just randomly within your life, right? What type of situations do you think trigger you or trigger your emotions to heightened, expression, right? So a disaster or a conflict, a change in your life, right? The pandemic has been a big change in all of our lives for a lot of different reasons. A health change, perhaps a relationship conflict. So think about any time that you've had to try to calm yourself and keep your cool in a heightened emotive state. Knowing your triggers is super important during that time, right? Knowing that you are somebody who could potentially, get overwhelmed or want to react instead of respond. That's very important, right? Knowing your feelings, validating those feelings is also something that's very important. It's okay to have the feelings that you're feeling, but you have to be able to take action on those feelings and do it in a way that is productive and successful when you are engaging in a confrontation or a conversation with somebody else or trying to resolve a situation or an experience, right? So thinking about your triggers and what they potentially are. Distraction is a valuable tool that can temporarily take the edge off of a situation, but it doesn't resolve the situation. It's not something that you can use to say, okay, this is never going to happen to me again, right? You'll have to return to it and actually take action on it to resolve it. But distraction can be helpful when you're trying to evaluate the situation on a whole and be able to say, okay, if I distract myself, I can think about it and I can ponder on it and I can kind of understand how I can resolve this in the future. So how can you distract yourself? How can you step away for just a few minutes to kind of clear your head? You could focus on something else. You could engage in doing something around the house. You could step away from it and do a little meditation or mindset work, maybe a little visualization techniques to say, okay, I'm thinking about being in a good space. I'm thinking about feeling really good. You can go and be creative. You can spend time with friends, right? If you're at work, you can take a step away and go for a walk around the office, go for a walk outside, separate yourself from the actual situation so you can clear your mind and clear your conscience. Ways to make yourself feel better in a relaxing type of state is a good tool to be able to say, oh, you know what, I'm feeling really stressed out right now. I need to go calm myself down, right? Utilization of our senses, our touch, our taste, our sight, our sound, our smell, allow us to get more in touch or back in touch with feeling good about how we're feeling at the moment so we can better address the situation that we need to address. And so think about how you can use these techniques or use these senses to calm yourself, right? Sometimes going to get a snack or a drink to like calm your nerves, not a drink to like hydrate yourself. Turning on some music, listening to music that's going to make you feel calm and relaxed, eating some good food, enjoying the touch of something that makes you feel comforted, your blanket, your bed, right? Seeing something that makes you happy, right? That brings you joy into your life, smelling something that makes you feel relaxed and calm, like essential oils, things like that. Practicing mindfulness, like we talked about visualization techniques, positive mantras, things like that can help you soothe yourself and calm yourself so you can work back into the situation and resolve it. If you are somebody who has anger toward things, you should be more mindful of your response rather than your reaction, right? Calm yourself down through using your senses, using your mindfulness, using your visualization techniques and your deep breathing exercises, and then decide when you're going to address the situation, right? Pick a neutral place and time. Think about what you're going to say. Use your emotions, right? I am feeling phrases and sentences. I feel like this. If you are in the moment with somebody, make sure that you're listening to them, because you can also, validate their feelings by saying, I hear what you're saying. What you're saying to me is, and then repeating back their words, right? Really listen to what is happening. It's not just about what you feel. It's also about what the other person feels as well. Try to remain as calm as you can and be as professional as you can, and always try to be as respectful as you can. Remember that words, they hurt sometimes. And so we have to be mindful of the words that we're using, the phrases that we're using, no name calling, be respectful, come from an open place, right? Don't be having your arms crossed, use good posture, and make sure that you are allowing yourself to be receptive of the information that's coming to you, whether or not you agree with it. Understand that those points that the person is making are potentially valid, and those feelings that they're having are valid. And then you can address your feelings and your emotions at the same time or simultaneously. Don't let your emotions get the best of you, however, right? Make sure that you are calm, make sure that you are using your mindfulness, that you are, you are a little bit distracting yourself and your brain to be able to say, I can do this, I can do this, I can get through this conversation. I feel like, use your I feel sentences, right? Don't say something or do something that you're going to regret, right? Don't go out and go on a bender. Don't yell at somebody who could potentially impact your career or your life in a detrimental way. Don't threaten people. Don't hurt yourself. Don't bring harm to others. Get your anger or your emotions in check first before you go into resolving this situation, right? Think of the benefits of controlling those strong emotions. You could potentially avoid disastrous situations. You could potentially avoid a negative interaction with somebody. You can avoid a breakup. You can avoid getting fired, right? Think about how severe some of the ramifications can be if you are acting in a way that is inappropriate or overly angry or threatening to somebody. If you are particularly reactive rather than responsive, and you are somebody who tends to lose their cool in situations. We have been living in a super uncertain time with a lot of information coming at us every second of every day. And so make sure you understand that you have control over what you are taking in and what you are allowing to impact your life and add to your stress, right? So social media is one of those things, or information that's coming from your schools or your local government or whatever it is. There's a lot going on. So you have to remember that you have the control to turn that off and say, I can't look at this right now because I need to get myself in the right frame of mind so I can be better for others. I can be better for myself, right? It shows that you can keep it together under pressure and that you have ways to move your energy in other places that can be more helpful to, getting it out of your space. It allows you to think more clearly. When you have a clear mind, you can think clearly, you can, reason more effectively, and you can respond better to the situation. It makes you healthier overall, reduces your blood pressure, reduces your stress level. All of those things are super important when you are engaged in, high energy conversations. You have an EAP that can help you get through any kind of situation. They're available to you 24/7, 365, all kinds of counseling sessions, legal stuff, daily life resources. It is 100% confidential and available to you without question, or it's all anonymous, right? So nobody knows you're making the phone call. Nobody knows that you are looking up the website. So check out what is available to you, and please make sure that you are doing everything you can to use your resources and be able to create a strong mindset, a positive outlook, and control your emotions, especially during times of uncertainty. Thank you guys for being here. I hope this was super helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.